Good morning, everyone. Secretary Radu, will you please call the roll?
Regent Bartel?
Here.
Regent Bradley?
Here.
Regent Crane?
Here.
Regent Danae Davis?
Here.
Regent Stan Davis?
Here.
Regent Drew? Regent Evers?
Here.
Regent Falbo?
Here.
Regent Loftus?
Here.
Regent Manydeeds?
Here.
Regent Pruitt?
Here.
Regent Smith?
Here.
Regent Spector?
Here.
Regent Vasquez?
Here.
Regent Walsh?
Here.
Regent Wingad?
Here.
Regent Womack?
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. The minutes of the December 9th and 10th, 2010 meeting of the Board of Regents have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they stand approved. The written report of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board has been provided. Are there any questions or comments? Regents on that board are Regents Stan Davis, Evers, Smith, and Vasquez. It is now time for our regular President's Report, and then after that we are going to move to our Diversity Awards and a series of other things this morning. Obviously, at this time of year, it's natural for budget matters to be very much in the front of everyone's mind. At this point, we are waiting the release of the Governor's proposed budget, which is planned, as many of you know, for February 22nd. I can assure you that we have not been standing still while we wait. In the past month, all of us, I know on this board and system staff and across the terrain have been very busy with legislative visits, meeting with both new and returning state officials, including many visits with Governor Walker's office and key leaders in the Department of Administration, including Secretary Mike Hipsch. President Riley and I met directly with the governor as recently as Tuesday. There have also been a whole series of meetings with UW system officials, with numerous legislators. I know the chancellors and other campus leaders have been reaching out across the state. We've also continued to reach out across the state to the business community, media outlets, and others to present our case for a new partnership between the university and the state. We've logged a few miles with recent visits to Hudson and Fond du Lac. I wanted to thank Chancellor Dean Van Galen, who joined me, and we addressed the Rotary Club in Hudson, a city that recently celebrated the grand opening of UW River Falls' Hudson Center to serve adult students in that region. President Riley and I traveled to Fond du Lac, where we met another Rotary Club to discuss our call for a new state-university relationship, one that would provide stable support for higher education and greater management flexibilities for all our UW campuses. And I also wanted to thank Dean Short from UW Fond du Lac for helping to arrange that visit. Overall, I think it's fair to say that the message has been pretty well received as we've talked to people. As we've made, I think people understand that if we're what we're asking for, which is sort of stable support from the state in return for accountability and being held accountable for the results of that support. Since our last meeting in December, several editorials have come out in support of allowing the UW to have greater flexibility as part of a plan to rev up the state's economic engines and produce more well-paying jobs for Wisconsinites. In your packets, you'll find strong editorials from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the Wisconsin State Journal, as well as news coverage from some of our visits around the state. President Riley also penned an op-ed that was published in the Journal-Sentinel on January 30th, calling attention to the powerful and job-producing asset that is UW Research. A copy of that piece, entitled "The UW, a Job Creator," is also in your folder. We've also received several letters of support from local business leaders. We'll share more of those with you in the future. But in particular, you'll notice in your packet there's one from a CEO who recently got a little bit of national attention. Green Bay Packers CEO Mark Murphy, who, as you'll notice, sent this letter on this very cool stationery, which is, as Regent Spector is pointing out, is now outdated. It should now read the 13-time world champion Green Bay Packers and include XLV there at the end if you want to make your own corrections. As you'll note, Governor, in his letter to Governor Walker, President Murphy makes a number of points, all of which I think are very much consistent with what we've been talking about in terms of the need for this upcoming budget to be one that puts a high priority on the university and support for the university as a part of the growth agenda and the need to grow both the Green Bay area and the entire state of Wisconsin. I'll let you read that at your leisure. I did want to take just a moment to talk about another issue that's being debated in the Capitol today, and that is Senate Bill 6, the proposal to require photo identifications to vote. Last week, this board took a clear position on this legislation. We called on its authors to amend the legislation to allow student IDs to be one of the permitted forms of voter identification at the polling place. So should such an amendment be included, the board would then have a neutral position on the underlying legislation. And I wanted to just take a minute to explain at least my own perspective and welcome other comments from others about SB 6 and how we got where we are. I think as Regents, our first responsibility is to consider the effect of any legislation on the 182,000 students within the UW system. That is where our expertise lies, and that is where our collective voices will be most effective in contributing to the legislative debate. Clearly, the failure to include student IDs as an acceptable form of identification would have a serious and deleterious effect on the right of students to vote. We need to speak loudly and clearly on that point and encourage students, faculty, chancellors, and others to join their voices to ours. I think it is essential that the Board of Regents draw on our understanding of the needs of our students to take an unequivocal stance that without this amendment we strongly oppose SB 6. As citizens, all of us can and should have our own view on the wisdom of voter ID legislation generally. However, if the legislation's authors agree to this amendment, I think our standing in taking a Board of Regents position on the underlying legislation is far less clear and compelling. Just to also keep you fully informed, there is another bill which has begun to move in the legislature that would eliminate same-day voter registration in Wisconsin. This, too, would have a direct effect on the ability of our students to participate in their democracy, and, at least in my opinion, runs counter to decades-long tradition in Wisconsin that has caused this state to consistently rank at the top of the list in voter turnout and participation. Since the same-day registration legislation is not moving at the pace of SB 6, we will have more time to consider our board position on that legislation. But I just wanted to offer at least a little bit of additional explanation of why, at least, I think we are where we are on SB 6. I know Regent Loftus had some thoughts that he wanted to offer on this issue.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I feel that we should strongly oppose the bill regardless of any amendments. Voting legislation is the blood sport of politics. Somebody wins, somebody loses, and when you look at the U.S. Constitution and its amendments, you look at the Wisconsin Constitution and its amendments, realize how many of those amendments deal with who can vote. And this is no exception. We are students, in particular, are voting because of the 26th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that lowered the voting age to 18. Now, right after that happened, there was a great deal of resistance in the legislature for students to vote where they went to school. This was a heck of a fight, which was never settled, except by the courts. They said, listen, the Constitution says you can vote when you're 18, and you vote where you are a resident. Wisconsin one time had a 1-year residency, then a 6-month, both of them disregarded. We now have a 10-day. So students are not voting where they go to school because they're students. It's because the U.S. Constitution says that they're residents. That's their residence. Now, the Political Science Department here has done a look at this legislation and what it means to Wisconsin. And requiring an ID issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles is particularly onerous and hard on ethnic and racial minorities. And here I'm quoting from the researchers. College students, senior citizens, disabled women, and those with low incomes. One study shows that roughly half of African American and Hispanics in Wisconsin lack a valid driver's license. Students' voting rights are threatened by laws, this law, that requires a voter's residential address appearing on the ID Now, I'll digress just a minute. Who's the first to go under this law? Well, all of our fine students from Minnesota. What are they going to do? Between 80 and 90% of Wisconsin college students, 80 and 90% of all Wisconsin college students do not have a driver's license that matches their campus residence. My mother, in the fine nursing home in Sun Prairie, right on the main street, and I would appreciate it if you'd visit her.
Would she appreciate
93 years old. It's typical that most of the elderly that live in nursing homes or assisted living no longer have valid driver's licenses. And many do not have government-issued IDs. Approximately, according to our faculty researchers, 180,000 Wisconsinites aged 65 and older are without a driver's license or a photo ID. Women are particularly hurt, women students, and especially due to marriage and other life events, according to the researchers. Only about half of women possess a birth certificate with their current legal name. 1/3 of women have no current ID. So, one of my objections to the idea that we support this if student IDs are added is, first of all, students aren't getting anything. They're just not losing something. Second, we go back to this idea that they get to vote and register because they're students, rather than that simple test because they're 18 years old and they're residents. So, you know, the 26th Amendment was lowering the voting age to 18. The 24th Amendment was outlawing the poll tax. That was only 1964. So I would urge that we don't get suckered in the idea that a powerful group that could be opposed to this bill is co-opted, because there are all kinds of other groups that aren't powerful that will be affected. So I would hope that we do this. There are some other technical things. Take a look at a student ID or a UW faculty and staff ID. Our new Chancellor Cross, you know, there's an election, the 15th in this state. If this law were in effect, I don't know, would he have had a chance to run over and change his driver's license and go down there and say, well, yeah, I don't know. This is a bill that's a solution that's looking for a problem. There isn't one. And I would hope that what our eventual position is to oppose the bill in all iterations.
Thank you, Regent Loftus. Regent Wingate?
I'll be brief, but I guess to me, simply put, when you put barriers making it harder for people to exercise their right to vote, less people will do it, and that includes our UW system students. I feel that students and everyone else around the state cannot allow restrictions to block their rights. Students around the UW system are informed about this legislation, and they oppose this legislation, and they have sent letters to the governor saying this. Students need to do more than just send letters, though. They need to make sure their voices are heard, and I'm going to call on them to do so. I just feel that without provisions that protect students' rights, I feel I have to do everything I can to oppose this, and I hope that students around the state and you will join me.
Thank you. Regent Vasquez.
I think most of you know that I was not born here, and so I had to obtain the right to vote. And one of the things that I remember on that day when I became an American citizen was a statement that the judge made that I have tried to live up to, even though I have not in all instances. And one of the things that he mentioned was that I was now, along with everybody else in the courtroom, that we now were voting citizens. And he then followed up by stating that it was that from his perspective, it was not as much a privilege, but that it was an obligation. It was a duty, it was a responsibility for us to do this, that it was not simply just a privilege and an honor to be able to vote, but that it was really a requirement of citizenship. And I have tried to live up to that, and I must admit there have been very few, but I'm very proud to say very few instances when I have not voted. And so I am very concerned when there are any kinds of movements that are made to deprive us of that duty and that obligation that we have as citizens. And in particular, what I'm disturbed are instances that are attempted to be justified, or situations that are attempted to justify by talking about almost like a zero tolerance for any fraud or any misdeed on voting. And what is very frustrating to me is these same bodies that are asking for almost zero tolerance in this area seem to not carry that over to other instances where we should be adhering almost to a zero tolerance, such as our abysmal, we had a great discussion yesterday on alcoholism and all of our drinking problems. And yet we do very little as a state to address that and almost try to reach a zero tolerance of drunk driving in this country. So I'm always amazed at how in one area we want zero tolerance, but in another area we really don't care. And I find that very disappointing. So for me, it is not just simply a privilege, it is a duty and a responsibility, and I think that we should not tolerate anything that will get us in, that will create obstacles for that.
Other comments? If not, we will obviously continue to watch this closely, and I think both collectively and individually, I would hope and believe that our voices will be raised in a variety of ways. So thank you. Regent Dave?
Just a point of clarification. So what is our position, and what happens with those who want it to be opposed, regardless of amendments?
The board's current position, which is always subject to further discussion, is, as a whole, our Board of Regents position at the moment is in support of an amendment to SB 6, which is the only real legislation that we currently have a position on. Urging the amendment of that legislation to allow student IDs as an acceptable form of identification for voters, and that if such an amendment were agreed to, the board's position would be neutral on the underlying legislation. So that is our current position. And again, that is subject to further, this is the Board of Regents. We have our members here, and we can, at any point in time, revisit that in Regent Loftus.
Regent Mini-Deeds asked me when did we decide that. That was our position. Let me talk about the amendment, or the amendments. The amendments themselves would have a great impact on the UW system. Take a look at the student ID. Does it have an address? Does it have an expiration date? These IDs are used as credit cards, things like that. And then you take a look at the legislation, the amendment, and it talks about student IDs issued by accredited institutions. Well, that means somebody's going to have to decide what accredited means. We all know what we think it means, the plain language version, but there is a opportunity here for administrative rules to be promulgated on what is accredited. Someone will have to decide that. There's one other issue, which I didn't bring up before, but I'll bring up this time. Our researchers say this, and I think it's a shame that we have to talk about the Voting Rights Act and Wisconsin in the same sentence. And that is that this talks about government IDs. But when you exclude those IDs issued by tribal governments, which this would, then you get very close to violation of the Voting Rights Act because Native Americans are a protected class under that legislation. And take a look at the Voting Rights Act and where it's applied. You know, it was just extended by a unanimous vote of Congress for 25 years. We have all kinds of jurisdictions in this country under the supervision of the federal government because of the belief that the voting process has to be watched. So I don't want to support this legislation, even if it's amended, because the amendment itself is big trouble.
Regent Crane.
I assume that the position that we have taken, and I appreciate the way that we get informed of what the system is suggesting as the position, and then we have a chance to respond. I personally am against the whole legislation. I'm a longtime member of the League of Women Voters, and that's basic to my convictions. But I'm assuming that the position taken, the initial position taken, was taken in the way it was because it directly related to our business. Was that the logic that was there?
As I tried to articulate, perhaps inadequately, that was, I think the position was taken on the grounds that our standing, if you will, on this debate is really to speak about the 182,000 students. I think there are, as have already been articulated and will probably continue to be articulated, there are a lot of reasons as individuals we can have concerns about the legislation as a whole as it affects other groups and individuals beyond students. But the belief is up to now that our standing on this issue would be to speak directly to its effect on the 182,000 students at the University of Wisconsin, and that if an amendment, however drafted, and Regent Loftus has raised some concerns about the drafting of that amendment, which I think is a very legitimate set of concerns, if an amendment was crafted to protect the rights of those 182,000 students to use their student ID as a form of identification, our standing to take a position as a Board of Regents on the broader and underlying legislation is somewhat less compelling. I mean, we can all have individual points of view, but the question of whether the Board as a whole and the Board as a Board of Regents should take a position on that is less compelling. But again, that is subject to conversation, debate, and it can change if the Board would like to, because it is the Board of Regents' position that we're talking about here. So. Additional comments? I sense a sort of a
It's an awful position to be in.
question.
Basically.
Regent Menendez.
Thank you. Everything that Regent Loftus has said is right on point. But, and I understand that some may think that a group such as this should only address something that impacts it and the standing argument. However, as I understand it, we have an obligation not only to the students, but to the faculty, to the parents of those students, to people who work in this system, and that comprises a huge component of the state of Wisconsin as far as population goes, people that are impacted by us. And I think when you're in a position like this, in a situation where you're confronted with something that you don't agree with, and of course, whatever the majority thinks is fine, but everything that Regent Loftus says makes perfect sense, and I would agree with him that we should oppose the entire proposal, not just a part of it, because we have the obligation to watch out for our students, but we also have a greater obligation. And this is quite a group that is looked at and admired, as I've been finding out since I've been appointed to this, all over the state. So I think we have a leadership obligation also. My point.
I appreciate it. Regent Womack.
Mr. President, may I move that I'd like to make a motion actually that we oppose SB 6 in its entirety.
Okay. It has been moved that the Board of Regents oppose SB 6 in its entirety. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further debate, conversation about this? Is kind of an interesting president's report, isn't it? Is there further conversation, discussion on this topic? Regent Spector.
I won't be popular with this, but I am concerned that there is a legitimate principle at stake of asking people to identify themselves before they vote. I couldn't agree more with Tom and Ed what they said about what's been done. But if, in the best of all worlds, there were enough amendments to cover all reasonable concerns, then I would, for one, find it not to be bad legislation. I am persuaded from what I read that there really isn't much fraud, at least what they report, that we're, as Tom said, it's kind of looking for a, what would you say, a problem or whatever, however you put it. But as a matter of principle, the idea that people should have to show some kind of identification, I don't find to be irrational. So if the law were well enough done, I think it would be reasonable. And by opposing it, we're just saying there shouldn't be any such law, if I understand what Betty's motion would be.
What is the existing situation? If you don't pass the law, isn't the existing
So the status
situation...
quo is the same.
So, Mike, are you troubled by the status quo? Which requires, in some cases, some proof of residence.
I don't think there's a real problem that requires a change, but I don't find the change to be irrational either.
I do need to call on Tom Stafford, who has something to share. Tom, you want to use that microphone?
That we didn't motion or notice this as an action item in our open meetings notice. So I do have some concerns about whether we're skirting the boundaries of that particular law. I'm not sure how we solve that, whether you put this off and have this debate another time when it's properly noticed. But I do have some concerns about that part of the situation.
We'll still talk about it. We just maybe not.
Yeah. Let's keep any other comments while we contemplate that. Regent Davis.
Well, didn't we come to the current position of opposing with an amendment without any official board action? So what would prohibit us from taking an action to change the informal position that we apparently reached without the board voting officially prior to this?
Does that help you, or is it that not do you much good?
I'm not sure if I understood that, Regent Davis. Can you repeat that?
We currently have a position
Correct.
that we came to through some process that wasn't noticed. So if that position was proper, why would doing it in a meeting in full public be a problem?
I think the position was arrived at through a passive review process that the Regents have had in place for a couple of years. So that's the process that's normally used. Without having a proper notice of the action and a resolution, I think you're really close to the edge here with open meetings law. So I think my advice would be to continue this debate with a properly noticed meeting and then have the action that you choose to take taken at that time.
Just to clarify.
Yes, Regent Davis.
So if Dave Giroux sent out another email saying, here's a position we want you to take, or this is a position we recommend the board takes, and it happens to be to oppose SB 6, and we get a period of time to comment, which is, I believe, how we got to where we are today. That's okay. We just can't do it in this meeting. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that is.
I just want to make sure I'm...
Yeah, I think that's
So
what...
tomorrow, somebody could send out an email to all of us and say, we think we should oppose SB 6, and then we could all agree on that, and it could be done.
I think it'd probably say we intend to oppose SB 6 unless
Right.
people
Right.
tell us to the contrary.
But that's okay, but this is, that's interesting. Okay.
That's the open meetings law.
I get the open...
You know, the open meeting law is an over...
Point made.
Other comments?
Just do it that way.
So I guess we will, proceed on course.
I just have a question.
Go ahead, Regent Walsh.
And it's really to Mike. I agree, obviously, there's nothing wrong with requiring some proof, but are you suggesting that the existing system doesn't do that, and that's why you would support this?
No, I guess I was saying that from what I read, the existing system hasn't done it completely, but the amount of failing hasn't been great. But if the legislature and the governor choose to do something, I give them a presumption that there's a reason for it if it's reasonable. There's no need to belabor. I'm being much too much of a political scientist.
Well, here's what I would suggest, and I'm open for alternative suggestions, but clearly one alternative course would be for us to distribute to the board sort of a proposed, because I am sensing from the not hearing dissent to this point at least, that a majority of the board is of the belief that we should take a position in opposition to SB 6 along the lines of what Regent Womack has indicated. So if we were to distribute that proposed position to the board in the same manner that we proposed the original position of the board and invited comment, questions, and, from the board, that we would follow the same process we followed to arrive at our current position, which is an amendment and neutral, and we would go forward in that way, unless someone has a better idea. Regent Bartel.
Mr. President, I think that's a reasonable approach, but what troubles me about that is that that approach does not give members of this board an opportunity to respond to the arguments that other members make, the facts that other members bring to the table, and that's why an open meeting where we all hear the same thing and can make a judgment is the best way to, it seems to me, for this board to make a decision, rather than sending emails back and forth or written materials back and forth.
I would agree with that, and I would suggest. Let me just suggest then an alternative, which we can speak with our legislative folks, and if we believe that there is unlikely to be action on SB 6 between now and our next board, there will not be. In that case, let me suggest the following: that we will notice our debate. We will have Regent Womack's proposed position, and we will discuss this in open session at the March meeting.
Okay.
And regents will have an opportunity to reflect on it and look at it, and then vote on it as a full board in open session. Yes.
Okay.
I guess a question for Dave. From what I've been hearing and seeing, it sounds like there was some desire to have this passed possibly in time for the April elections.
I think what we've heard since then, Regent Davis, is that it's a very complex issue, and it's likely to not move quite that quickly, especially with priority being given to the budget repair bill and other items. Is that fair?
So, if that's acceptable, if we learn anything different, we will talk about. But democracy's messy sometimes, and we will do it. We will proceed accordingly. That's Regent Falvo.
Chuck, forgetting the topic for a moment, I'm a little interested in this process of how we take the position. I said, forgetting the topic for a moment, I'm a little interested in this process of how we take a position. Has our neutrality position been? Has it come out, or has it not?
Yes.
I mean, it has.
Yes.
Okay.
It's my understanding it has. So we
going back and thinking about, yes, we'll be, but what I'm still concerned that we've already put out a position on this as a Board of Regents, knowing that there was a good amount of opposition. So I'm questioning the process of how and why could we take a position when Tom's input and whoever else's input was going back and forth. How did we get there, and why did we put out a position? And it's not so much about this issue; it's in general. How do we do this, and is there a better way? Because obviously that position was not representing the feelings of this group.
Let me address a couple things here that may be helpful, maybe not, but in an active legislative session, you have many, many bills introduced that we look at and try to select the ones that might have implications for the university, and then in a passive review process, send those out with a suggested position for the regents to react to. So I think on this one, when we followed that procedure, Regent Loftus reacted and did some research, and there was a lot of email back and forth raising questions about whether the position that was suggested, which was amend it, or if it's not amended that way, oppose it, was strong enough, and he articulated why he believed it wasn't and we should do something stronger. So that's the process. It's a sort of a passive review process, and the regents do have a chance to look at that recommended position and the bill and respond via email or phone or however to Chuck or me or to Dave Giroux. And I think probably Regent Loftus was the one who responded in this case. None of the rest of you did. So, did? Okay.
John
well, maybe two. Okay. So, and John Drew did too. So there were a couple of regents who responded. So again, we could always alter that process, but you could spend a huge amount of time at regents meetings discussing every bill that might have an implication for the board. And I think part of the reason we're having this lengthy discussion now is because some regents feel like this has more than normal impact on the university in some large ways. And the second point I'd make is, just in terms of a framework for thinking about this, there's lots of legislation proposed that, as individuals, we might really want to support or might really want to oppose, and in any given one of those, a majority of the board might take a position to do one or the other. But we do try not to get involved in doing all of that, but to focus on bills and issues that most directly affect university students, university faculty, staff, university interests. So I think one of the tests in a situation like this is this it's a big societal issue, but does it kind of in an extraordinary way affect a lot of our constituencies and our issues in the university as a big issue, rather than just, can students vote with a student ID? Now, I think Regent Loftus is making, and some of the rest of you making an argument that, yes, this is different because it does affect, in a big way, major interests across the board that we have and that we represent in the society. And I think that's a healthy debate you're having over that, and we ought to continue it at the next meeting.
I understand that, and I have no problem with what issues you have in the past decided to take a position on, or a neutrality position, or any position. I think, as I'm thinking about this one, I think it's you put out a position to us, and if we don't respond, we support. And then we took a position in this case of neutral if the student IDs would be used. I think we maybe should have worded it that a majority of the board. Because anything else looks like it's unanimous. And in this case, it was not, in the informal process. So I think how we come out with our positions on the issues you think are important enough, if it isn't a majority, if it isn't unanimous, it needs to be stated in a different way. Our position needs to be stated in a different way. That it's a majority, knowing that a majority means that it's not everything.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to parse this too much more, but my response to Regent Falbo would be this, that the University of Wisconsin system speaks in a lot of different ways to the public, to the legislature, to the governor. And when it does, we don't approve every single last message, every word, every sentence as a Board of Regents. There are certain things that the system feels that it needs to, system staff basically, needs to get some feedback from regents on before it does something. I don't regard some of these messages that I get as speaking for the Board of Regents. It is, I understand that the Board of Regents is the ultimate governance body for the system, but I think that what the system staff is saying is, here's what we propose to do. If there is a big problem with this, let us know. But we are speaking as a staff of the system, not for the Board of Regents. So it isn't a question of whether it's unanimous or a majority or anything else. It is a statement for the system, not for the Board of Regents.
Is it? How did our statement read? Was it representing the Board of Regents or the system?
I think, and Dave can help me clarify this, I think on the bill review process, we put it out, ask for you to respond, and then depending on the response we get, we say, okay, this seems to be an okay position for the board, and we say then, I believe, Dave, it's the Board of Regents' position on this bill, do we?
That's correct. And to be honest, normally we don't get much feedback at all.
Right.
And that's not a criticism, that's just a fact.
We agree with you, Norm.
That's a good thing, Regent Feldman.
So I think Regent Martell articulated it very well. These are fast-moving subjects. They cover a lot of ground. And as we've already discussed, as Regent President Pruitt hit on, we try and focus on the unique and specific interests of the university as an institution. On this bill and on others, our students clearly have the freedom to exercise and speak their voice. Our faculty members have the academic freedom to weigh in based on their own personal viewpoints and academic expertise, and they do quite freely and quite effectively. And nothing we do in our position hampers either of those audiences from doing and engaging as citizens what they feel is necessary. What we look for from you is a little guidance about the ways that we communicate and our colleagues at each campus communicate with elected officials so that we can begin to approach some type of consensus, some type of common voice on behalf of the institution, which is a little different than all of the individual parts.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment. And Mike, I guess I disagree with you. When we tell people what our belief is, we don't say it's unanimous belief. We don't say it's a 2-to-1 belief or what our opinion is. When we send a message, it's the message of the board and how we arrive at what the votes are. I don't think are important. This so much reminds me of back in the 60s when Madison argued for 2 weeks on whether or not it should declare itself a nuclear-free zone. And they didn't announce that it was a 12-to-6 vote. They just did it. We don't need it.
I would say, I would just, if I might, offer a couple thoughts. One, I think this is an educational process we're all going through here in terms of we're learning something new all the time about. So, and we should and can look at alternative ways of doing this going forward. I would also say that it was intentional that I raised this in the President's report, reflecting what I knew to be Regent Loftus's concerns as well as concerns that were raised by Regent Drew. And I, also asked Regent Wingate to consider offering a comment, and that's provoked other comments. So I feel like at least we have done our job here as regents in terms of expressing alternatives, and it is going forward. We have a process, and we've let everyone take a good look at it. So any other comments? If not, we will plan to come back to this issue and for a healthy discussion in March, I'm sure, on the pros and cons. And we'll also likely provide you with probably some additional background information on the status of the legislation at that point and have a full and open board discussion on it. Any other comments? If not, my President's report, which was supposed to be 10 minutes, is running a little behind schedule. So, let me just note, I'm wondering if should we move, we could take, at this moment, we have the Regent Diversity Awards. I could suspend my President's report. We could do the Regent Diversity Awards if the winners are here. And then we could come back and, and move forward with...
Complete your President's report.
With the future, the next President's report.
Yes.
So if that's the case, let me move pretty directly to call on Regent Vasquez, who has chaired the Regent Diversity Awards Committee, for his presentation. Regent Vasquez.
Thank you very much, President Pruitt. Just a couple of quick thoughts before I read my comments here. One of the things that I found last night very enjoyable was the table that we sat and we're having wonderful conversation, and a little something about diversity, how diversity also can find lots of commonality to it. And it was enjoyable to see the diversity of 4 former altar boys representing very diverse backgrounds having a lot of commonality of how we experience our altar boy experiences and many of the good things and rather awkward things we experience as altar boys. The other comment I wish to just share with you is that there are very few times when we as Regents have an opportunity to really go beyond our meetings and these kinds of gatherings. And I just want to share that for me personally, there are 2 instances that I find really very, very enjoyable as a Regent. One of them is the opportunity to participate in the graduation ceremonies and to actually be there and see the hundreds and hundreds of individuals, men and women, that have actually accomplish what they set out to do. And it is just a very personal, enjoyable moment for me to be there. And the second one is this that we're going to do today, and that's the opportunity for us as Regents to recognize the many, many good things that are happening and that are being done by individuals. So with that, let me move forward to my comments. And then I will start with, obviously, a good morning. On behalf of my fellow Regents, I would like to extend a special welcome to this year's award recipients, families and friends, and colleagues who have joined us here this morning. We are truly honored. This is the 3rd year that the Board of Regents has presented its Diversity Awards, which are meant to recognize the outstanding contributions to diversity and inclusion by people and programs at our UW institutions. While the awards are relatively new, these are ideals that the UW system has promoted for more than 20 years. Today's awards are part of a special family of awards that we as Regents sponsor. They include the Regents Teaching Excellence Awards, which recognize outstanding teaching, and the Regents Academic Staff Excellence Awards, which honor non-instructional, administrative, and professional academic staff for their exceptional service to their respective UW institutions. The Regents Diversity Awards program, which we present here this morning, was established through a board directive calling for the formal recognition of individuals, teams, or units within the UW system who have successfully fostered greater access and success for historically underrepresented populations. These efforts are vitally important, not only because it's the social just and fair thing to do, but because of the educational and economic value of this university and beyond. The people and programs we are going to hear about this morning understand these needs. More than that, they do something about meeting these needs. While their ways and means might be different, our award recipients also share a few priorities. Each shows a genuine respect for human differences, a deep attentiveness to the learning process, and a keen responsiveness to the students and their educational needs. We are proud to recognize these accomplishments. This year's selection committee included Regents Danae Davis, Ed Menedides, and Aaron Wingard. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow Regents for their for their time and effort in carefully reading and evaluating the portfolio submissions that we received on behalf of our UW system institutions. Coming up with the final award recipients was hardly an easy job, but only because we had such fine candidates to choose from. And that makes a strong statement about the diversity and inclusive work that is being done all around the UW system. In fact, I'd like to encourage campuses to step forward and share even more of their accomplishments in the coming years of this award. We know that there's a lot of good work being done, and we'd like to hear even more about it. A few last notes before we present the awards. Profiles of each of our award winners has been placed in your folders. We encourage you to read them. I think you'll be very impressed. As far as the award ceremony itself, my colleagues on the Regents Selection Committee will each introduce one of the award recipients and present the award. Each winner will then have an opportunity to address the board from the podium. And now I will ask Regent Aaron to come forward and give the first award. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, it is my privilege to present the 2011 Board of Regents Diversity Award in the individual category to Dr. Howard Spearman of UW-Milwaukee. Trying to remember, does the etiquette say he comes up and stands here while I introduce him? Do I have to make him stand next? Okay, come up here and stand next. I got to know Dr. Spearman a little bit better at dinner last night, and based on that conversation, we'll be playing bingo sometime soon. Right? So it was an interesting night at Birmingham, but aren't they all, I guess?
Answer yes.
One of the things I'm going to miss most, I guess. So, we're behind schedule and I'm getting distracted. Dr. Spearman is Director of the Multicultural Mentoring Program in UWM's Lubar School of Business. As part of this growing program, multicultural students are connected with business professionals in the Milwaukee area for a one-on-one, year-long mentoring relationship. The mentors assist students in developing their academic and career goals as well as enhancing their networking skills. It's an acknowledgement, really, that success in college is more about more than just about coursework. Under Dr. Spearman's leadership, participation in the Multicultural Mentoring Program has grown from 17 students in 2005 when it was launched to 50 students in 2009. The success of this program goes far beyond the increased number of students and mentor participants, according to Business School Dean Timothy Smunt. As Dean Smunt put it, the program's success is, quote, best reflected in the outcomes of these mentoring relationships, more confident, prepared, and connected students. It's noteworthy also that the mentors, the business professionals involved, are keen to stay involved with the program. Said one, quote, Dr. Spearman has been able to demonstrate to myself and other employers that the program's success rate, its impact on the students, and the benefits to the businesses are worth the time and effort required to be involved in the program, end quote. In turn, this win-win relationship between Milwaukee's business community and the university also fits very well with UWM's mission as an urban serving institution. Dr. Spearman's involvement doesn't stop there. He does a lot of stuff, believe me. He is also the multicultural program coordinator and senior academic advisor in the Lubar School of Business, with a caseload of about 750 undergraduates. And as if that's not enough to keep him busy, he also supervises the Multicultural Tutoring Center, which offers academic assistance to courses critical to admission to the business major. And in each of the last 3 years, the center served close to 60 students, 80% of whom were subsequently admitted to the major. I guess we could say, and this is corny, but stay with me, I guess we could say this is a man who knows how to take care of business. Without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce to you Dr. Howard Spearman.
Good morning. Let me begin by just saying how honored I am to be standing before everyone today. I'm appreciative and I'm thankful. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, President Riley. Thank you, the Board of Regents. Thank you, Regent Vasquez. Thank you to the Diversity Award Committee. I never take for granted just being able to appreciate those who were able to witness and recognize the impact of the Multicultural Mentoring Program within the Lubar School of Business. And although I'm receiving an individual award today, trust me, it was a team effort. I'm appreciative and thankful to Assistant Dean T.J. Jeske for nominating me. Thank you. I'm thankful for former Lubar School of Business Dean, Kanti Prasad, who put what I call the A-team together, and that's my advisory board. Former Vice President of First Star Bank, Jill Pelisek, former CEO of Miller Brewing, Leonard Goldstein, and Dr. Bill Raggins, who is also a full professor within the Lubar School of Business. And also my mentor and one of my professional guides, Dr. Joan Prince. Thank you so much for your efforts in helping me to lead the way. And although my wife is not here, I'm so thankful that she and my two sons allowed me to spend time with my colleagues. They allow me to leave and come home every day. And I do not take that for granted. Now, the purpose of the Multicultural Mentoring Program is to create connections between the Lubar School of Business, primarily multicultural business students, and the Milwaukee business community. And as the coordinator of the program, I have been able to coach students, train mentors, and provide a culture where multicultural students begin to identify with the Lubar School and the business community. As was previously stated, we went from 17 matches to this year 54 matches annually. We've partnered with major corporations such as Manpower, Miller Coors, Harley-Davidson, Coleman & Williams, Baird, Rotary Club of Milwaukee, and Greater Milwaukee Committee. 21 out of the 29 graduating seniors landed a job right after or right before they graduated. 11 out of the 25 returning students landed an internship. However, the true success of the program has been measured by the quality of the relationships and success outcomes established by the students in the program. Students like Julieta Langarica, who is currently employed by Boys and Girls Club of Milwaukee. She graduated with a double major in accounting and finance and her MS in professional accounting from the Lubar School. Also, students like Jacqueline Martinez, who was one of our business scholars who also graduated in finance, and she's currently serving in a management rotation program within Rockwell Automation. Melody He, who landed a summer internship with Generation Growth Capital. Corey Nettles was one of our keynote speakers in the networking forum. I always encourage all of our students, make sure you say hello, follow up, send an email. Corey Nettles invited her to his office to meet his colleagues. After, what she didn't realize was it was an informal interview. After that, he offered her an internship for the summer. These are the experiences that are invaluable. They're priceless. And I'm so appreciative because the Multicultural Mentoring Program serves as a conduit for these students. So on behalf of them and the many other lives impacted by the program, I sincerely thank you.
Usually when I'm standing up in front of a group of people, I'm trying to argue that either the person that's in a car accident couldn't have possibly hurt their neck, or that my poor client was severely injured and did hurt their neck. So, as you might suspect, this is a refreshing change. I'd like to thank the staff for making this print larger so I don't have to wear my glasses. It's been said that success is in the details, and that certainly applies to our next award winners. It's my privilege to present the 2011 Board of Regents Diversity Award in the team category to the Community Liaison Counselors in the Admission Office of the UW Oshkosh. give you a little background about this group. 10 years ago, UW-Oshkosh launched a program aimed at increasing the representation of students of color on campus. It was quickly recognized that in order to fully commit to these unique student groups, there needed to be individuals who were immersed in the culture, could speak the language, and would be trusted and respected in each of the communities that they were visiting. The result of UW-Oshkosh's small but dedicated team of 4 full-time and 1 part-time staff member, specifically targeting and recruiting and enrolling students from the African American, Hispanic, and Latino, Hmong, and Asian, and Native American populations. This is a group that knows about outreach, and I'm going to have to read this because this is pretty impressive. This group, in the last year, they've made more than 100 high school visits, participated in 24 diversity college fairs and parent programs, sent out personalized mailings to nearly 3,100 prospective students of color, and were involved in more than 1,500 students of color coming to the campus at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh and events that they organized. Not only do these staff members act as recruiters, but they serve as conduits between various ethnic communities and the university. They carry memberships and active roles in organizations like the Hmong American Interagency Partnership and the United Immigrant Opportunity Services. The results have been pretty impressive. From 2001 to 2010, there's been a 313% increase in the number of applications received from students of color at Oshkosh, a 217% increase in the number of students of color admitted, and a 238% increase in the number of students of color enrolled. In 2010, more than 11% of the first-year students, let me say that again, 11% of the first-year students at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh identified themselves as students of color. I'd also like to point out that the connection between the community liaison counselors with their students doesn't end at enrollment, and this is important. Instead, each shares in the responsibility to help new students engage and connect on campus once they're there. Once again, I'm going to say that again. They help them engage and connect on campus once they arrive. They refer and direct students to various program services and introduce new students to academic support services, academic advisors, and career counselors. To better describe what these people do, I'm going to share the words of someone who has seen their work up close, and that's Petra Roter, University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh's Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. When she recommended this group for the award, she said that their success comes not through traditional means of recruitment, but through individualized and community-based approaches. Quote, they went into schools, community agencies, churches, and into prospective students' homes to develop trust and assist students and their families to understand all the factors of deciding to go to college. The liaisons understood and respect the students and their families' needs and concerns, and take the time to provide that individualized attention and assistance as needed. All in all, this team and its members have significantly contributed to a more diverse, open, and compassionate campus climate. With that, it's my pleasure to present the 2011 Regents Diversity Award to the admissions counselors, community liaisons from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. Here to introduce the team is Flora Stoppel. Flora, please come up.
Good morning, everyone. I want to, on behalf of the team, first say thank you, and I guess this is a surprise. I get to introduce my colleagues. First of all, Quincy LeGrand, And my colleagues are sitting. Thomas Young, Roger Westcott, our newest member. He just joined the team, and he's already digging right in and ready to go. And Quincy LeGrand is going to share some comments with you. Again, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Beverly. Beverly is our halftime person in Milwaukee.
Thank you. Everyone wants to come up and join us? It would be excellent. Great. To President Riley, Chairman Vasquez, Regents, Chancellor Wells, Vice Chancellors Roeder, Ernst, Sunlightner, it is with humility and pride that we gratefully accept the Board of Regents Diversity Awards today. We are honored to be recognized for these achievements and even more grateful to have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of our students, their families, and in our communities. We're very proud to serve the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh in supporting the development of the climate, inclusivity, and diversity on our campus. It is a part of the personal fabric and the very being, and it is our passion that inspires us. It should not come as a surprise that each one of us is a UW-Oshkosh alumnus. We believe in our great institution, and above all else, we're committed to providing educational opportunities to our communities, people of color, underserved and underrepresented populations, as well as first generations. It has been more than 10 years since UW-Oshkosh began this journey with a deliberate purpose and intent. We recognize the need to reach out and embrace the opportunity to open the doors to a more diverse population. So it began with just one admissions counselor, community liaison. Now we have a team which is 5 strong. We represent a variety of cultural and ethnic backgrounds and continue to live and immerse ourselves in those cultures. Our efforts extend beyond typical admissions recruiting. We are relationship-focused, resourceful, and compassionate. A typical day may mean attending the Hmong American Partnership Community Meeting, getting up at 4 a.m. to drive down to Milwaukee and pick up 6 students that don't have transportation to campus, interpreting information about food or housing to a limited English proficient-speaking parent, or even walking a student to the financial aid office because something just isn't right. The students, their families, and their communities recognize us as a bridge, the conduit for greater achievement and improved quality of life. We know what it feels like to be them. We've been there. We've done it. We are them. At the core of our work is trust. Trust that is built between the student, the family, the school, and the community. It may be our biggest attribute. With it, our university grows and develops because our population becomes more diverse. Without it, potential students remain trapped and their dreams never become reality. In just the last 5 years, the number of students of color enrolling for the first time at UW-Oshkosh has increased by 56%. That many more dreams are taking shape. In collaboration and partnership with faculty, students, staff, and administration, we continually strive to close the achievement gap not only through new enrollments, but through our programs and services, our curriculum and teaching, and our climate. Our efforts are very individualized and personal. They must be in order to connect and build the relationships. What a tremendous step for a student to leave a reservation for the first time and move into a residence hall. How scary and intense is it for a student to be the only student of color in a classroom setting? That is why each of the 5,556 students of color that we made personal contacts with in the last year need to feel valued and included. This is what drives us. As an admissions counselor and community liaison at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, we recognize that we are part of a very special commitment and access for all, an incredible movement to embrace inclusivity as a part of our everyday lives. Thank you for sharing these values and providing the leadership to achieve them. We will always remember and appreciate this recognition. We thank you today.
Danae Davis, and I want to do two things before I get into my prepared remarks. One is to recognize one of our other committee members who I think because when we did our call to arrive at these decisions, she wasn't present on the call, and absence truly does make the heart grow fonder, and Betty Womack is also on our committee, and I want us to recognize that she is a valuable contributor. And the second is to say to Dr. Spearman, Julieta Langarica, through Corey Nettles, is now on my Pearls for Teen Girls Finance Committee. So that extension does come around, so good work. So I'm here to talk about, and I am last but not least, being able to present the award in the institution and unit category to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Yeah, it's kind of a UWM day, for its Southeast Asian American Student Services program. The program is represented here today by the program's coordinator, Dao Bang. This program has been around for a few years, and I'd like to share a little of its history. As many of you probably know, following the United States withdrawal from the Vietnam War, Southeast Asian refugees, Cambodians, Hmongs, Laotians, and Vietnamese began arriving in Wisconsin and in other parts of the U.S. This refugee resettlement continued through the early 2000s. These refugees were often among the poorest and least educated immigrants to come to Wisconsin. But with a strong desire to improve their life conditions, some began to enter the UW system to obtain a post-secondary degree. They faced significant challenges. Often, institutions did not possess the cultural knowledge, skill, or ability to serve students from Southeast Asia. Many students felt alienated, and many dropped out. In 1986, however, the Southeast Asian Student Academic Services Program was established to serve these students at UW-Milwaukee. And in 2006, the program name was changed to Southeast Asian American Student Services to encompass the U.S.-born students of Southeast Asian backgrounds. This program and its people have produced significant results over the years. They've done it by recognizing that the advising needs of these students from refugee and immigrant backgrounds may go far beyond what courses to select or which majors to choose. It also demands cultural understanding and the sensitivity to proactively respond to students' unique situations. It means getting it, for example, when students say they need to delay their academic progress or rearrange their academic work due to family commitments. And it means respecting those students' commitment or responsibilities to family. The results are impressive. Working together with other relevant campus offices and community agencies, the Southeast Asian American Student Services efforts have contributed to not only increased recruitment, but also increased retention and graduation rates during the last decade. In the fall of 1990, there were 93 Southeast Asian students attending UWM. And by the fall of 2010, that number reached 725. That's a 633% increase in change. So currently, UWM has the largest Southeast Asian student population in UW system. This growth also contributes greatly to the diversity of the UWM student population. This past fall, Southeast Asian students represented 2.5% of the total student population at UWM and 12.3% of the students of color at UWM. The feedback from one student involved with the program pretty much captures what the SAASS, what makes it so special. That student noted that through SAASS, he had been, quote, motivated and pushed to achieve what I thought were impossible, unquote. The office has only 2 full-time staff, but they apparently pack a big punch. Okay, there we go with that kind of pack a good punch. Okay, whatever. Without further ado, and I really do mean it, it's my sincere pleasure to present the Regents Diversity Award to the UWM Southeast Asian American Student Services Program, represented here today by its coordinator, Dao Bang.
morning. Thank you very much. I got a message to my cell phone that my daughter and my wife at the hotel, they need to leave by 11 o'clock, so I'm going to make it really short. Thank you very much for recognizing the work that we do daily, and also for recognizing the impact that we made to UW-Milwaukee, and also for serving our students. I'm a product of the UW system. I graduated from UW-La Crosse, and I did my graduate studies in Milwaukee, and so I'm proud to be part of the UW system, and proud to be a graduate of the UW system. The work that we do, even with the two staff, we provide academic advising and also recruitment. And with two staff, we recruit as far as Warsaw and Madison, Green Bay, down to Milwaukee. The things that I think that really impacted our recruitment or our enrollment in Milwaukee is to reach out to the agencies or the Wisconsin Educational Opportunities programs around the state that serve low-income families or students in their community. They're more likely to be college-bound, and once they're on campus, they're more likely to be retained. And that's what we've been doing successfully for the last 10 years or so. And for retention, I think that one of the things that I believe is very important is that once they are on campus, we want to make sure that they're happy to be on campus. And that includes a lot of things that we need to do on a daily basis. Making sure that the campus climate is friendly to them, making sure that any needs that they need are met. That includes working with financial aid, working with the school business, other advising units on campus, make sure that any questions that they have, any needs that they have are met. And those are the things that we do daily. Now, we cannot accomplish that with my colleagues across campus and around the state, the DPI offices in Madison, Green Bay, Warsaw, in Manitowoc, and so on, and also the units on campus. Before I close this, I wanted to thank Dr. Cheryl Ajorojuju, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Climate. She has been a very, very big supporter of the multicultural programs and for creating the campus for our students to succeed. The campus climate that's important for our students to succeed. And I also thank you for Dr. Jia Juyi Wang. She's an assistant professor in the history department, and she is the person that nominated my program for this award. And so thank you. And also thank you for the Board of Regents and also for the Board of Regents Award Committee for selecting our program to receive this award. Thank you very much.
President Pruitt, I'd like to, first of all, extend an apology to my colleague, Betty Womack. I do apologize for not including her in my formal comments. She has been an invaluable member of the committee. The other thing I also would like to mention is that life is not static, and nor is society, and most definitely the same thing in our UW system. And as a result of that, the committee has recognized that while the original directive was very specific to diversity, we really have to acknowledge that there is much more happening within the UW system, and if we're truly going to be a system that values not only diversity but overall inclusiveness, that we have to revisit the directive of the regents. And so we anticipate that we will be coming back to the board with probably a redefinition of this award that would allow us to be really much more inclusive. There are many wonderful things happening in other areas such such as women's studies, such as the whole just tremendous progress that has been happening within the UW system around gay, lesbian, transgender, and many other populations that we really have to also recognize. So we do anticipate that with the good work of Vicki Washington and her office, that we will probably be coming back to the board with a redefinition of how this award can really recognize the wealth and richness of true diversity and inclusiveness in the UW system. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Vasquez. Thank you to the committee, and congratulations to all the award winners. It's very, very impressive accomplishments, and you should be very proud. Speaking of, nice segue, speaking of redefinition, let me resume in my report and review. I wanted to address a subject that we began talking about a couple months ago, and that I think is an important one for all of us, which is the region policy documents. As I'm sure you realize, the 161 region policy documents, or RPDs as they are called, vary widely in both substance and style. Over the past 40 years or so, the Board of Regents has adopted policies for many reasons. Some have been adopted in response to high-priority issues such as textbook affordability or relationships with educational loan lenders. Some policies are operational in nature. Some adopt principles or endorse studies. And I have no doubt that the reasons behind all these policies were justified and compelling at the time they were adopted. However, I do believe that we have a responsibility as a governing board to assess our policies periodically and to evaluate whether they reflect the board's current objectives. With all due respect to our well-intentioned predecessors on this board, back in April 1973, a policy entitled Non-Discrimination in Oratorical Contests, which denounces separate male and female oratorical contests held by the Interstate Oratorical Association. Probably doesn't need to be on our books anymore, because the Interstate Oratorical Association voted to discontinue separate male and female contests in May of 1973, the month after the region policy was adopted. There are many other examples of outmoded or unclear policies that we ought to look at, I think. And I have asked Board Secretary Jane Redoux to lead a comprehensive effort to review and recommend updates and improvements to the region policy documents. Joining Jane in this effort will be Jessica Lathrop, who joined the board office in mid-January. Is she here? Where is she? There she is. Welcome, Jess. This will be a really fun first assignment for you. Baptism by fire. The Board of Regents office will work closely with the offices of Academic Affairs, Finance, Capital Planning, and others to research the background and the current status of each policy. I know that Vice President Spector has a special interest in the relationship between the policy documents, the board's administrative rules, and state statutes, and this will also be covered in the research. As Regents Bartel, Crane, and Smith are aware, the committee chairs will play an important role in guiding the policy review process by developing a priority order for looking at the policies and discussing the policies in their committees. I think we may want to consider a process that is organized around kind of a series of buckets, including one, obsolete policies, such as the Oratorical Association example. Second, complex policies with significant shared governance issues, some of which we may want to defer until our policy review process is better established, because they obviously involve the interests, and we would need very much to have the involvement of our shared governance partners in those reviews. Third, policies reflecting high priority issues for this board. And a fourth bucket might be policies that were adopted or changed very recently and that don't necessarily need to be reviewed at the moment. And then the last bucket might be sort of holes, areas in which new policies might be considered, and taken into account. You may recall that in President Riley's letter to Governor Walker earlier this week on flexibilities, he said, and I quote, "Regent President Chuck Pruitt has already agreed to launch a thorough review of Regent policy documents to eliminate outdated rules, ensuring that new statutory freedoms are not hampered by UW system administration's regulations and procedures that we can clear away on our own." unquote. In short, one of our goals of this review is to eliminate or revise policies that the board decides unnecessarily restrict the effective operations of our campuses and to provide to our campus CEOs the flexibility they need to manage their campus. So we will make that part of this review process as well. With that, I just wanted to open it up, at least briefly, to a general conversation on the board and ask board members for your views on some of the matters highlighted in your materials, including questions like, should we have a standard definition of what constitutes a board policy? Should the policies consistently address long-term or enduring issues, for example? Should policies have certain standard components? Are there types of policies or buckets that should be reviewed sooner rather than later? I think your reactions to these kinds of questions, as well as the reactions and thoughts that we might have from chancellors or others in the room, would be helpful as we begin what I suspect is going to be a long journey over the coming months and probably longer as we review this. So let me throw it open for questions, comments, and discussion.
As long as you mentioned the long journey, what kind of timetable are you thinking of?
I am open to a timetable. I think as long as I have no doubt that this is going to take a while. Yeah. And I think it is obviously complicated, and I think some of the issues, certainly on some of the policies, as I suggested, I think we may want to wait until we've established sort of and begin to get a routine and a rhythm. I just think that it is an important process to begin, and that we should begin and continue it as long as it takes. And at some level, I would suggest that I think a board of this sort should always be in a policy review mode, and that there should never be a time that it isn't sort of looking and making sure that what stands as policy reflects current reality.
And clearly, this is a very good idea and very important. And one other question I would ask is whether or not there are certain policies that have proven to be problematic to us that need to be addressed on a more timely basis.
And that's, I think, certainly could be one of the criteria.
That's a different thing from the ones that are outdated that nobody's paying any attention to, right, that are just fun to point out.
I think that could certainly be one of the things that should influence sort of people's review as you go through it. Other comments, thoughts on this?
I think it's a great idea, and I've got some ideas orgy, so.
About specific policy?
Sounds good. Other thoughts, Chance? Anybody else? If not, we can consider this to be a passive review and assent.
Nobody objected.
I will now, in that case...
We'll call it you, Danny.
I will now turn it over to a reported president of the system.
No, but thank you. Thank you, President Pruitt. Along with the other public appearances that President Pruitt mentioned about our trips around the state, I had also the opportunity to recently visit UW Parkside and meet with Chancellor Ford and her Dean of Business and their School of Business and Technology's Business Advisory Board, and I carried the same message to them that about the importance of higher education and the work our campuses, in this case particularly Parkside, are doing to help lead Wisconsin's economic growth. And you're a great group. You're lucky to have them, as you know. And their question after we got through talking with them was, what can we do to help? So we had some ideas about what they might do, and we'll follow up with that. It's obviously very important for all of our systems to maintain their ties with local business leaders across the state. There's a statewide group we've been working with for a number of years now called the Wisconsin Higher Education Business Roundtable, or WEBER, and this week their board of directors released a formal resolution of support encouraging Governor Walker and the state legislature to provide UW campuses with greater administrative flexibilities. Their February 9th news release, copies of which are in the packet this morning, said, quote, "The roundtable is convinced that given the appropriate managerial flexibility, the UW could achieve new savings, enhance productivity, and help individual institutions and campuses manage resources in these challenging times." That resolution went on to encourage the governor and members of the legislature to support UW's proposals that would allow UW to manage education-related building projects more efficiently, let UW participate in higher education purchasing consortia, expand UW's ability to address both access and educational quality when setting tuition while preserving an affordable net price for students with documented need, and to let the UW use existing resources to wisely address competitive compensation challenges, recognizing that UW does indeed compete for talent in a global market. So, again, it's one thing for those of us who work for and with the university to say that. It's another thing for business leaders representing corporations around the state to say that on our behalf, and we hope that folks at the other end of State Street are listening to Weaver and others that are making that case for us. And speaking of flexibilities, you also have in your packet a letter that I sent to Governor Walker earlier this week about flexibilities and a report attached to it called The Flexible UW is a Strong UW. We had a Regents or a Chancellor's meeting a little while ago, and what we heard from all of the chancellors was we want to translate flexibility for the system into what this means specifically at our campuses. And we want to be able to get that in the report. We want to be able to define clearly exactly what we're asking for in the statutes that would need to be changed to provide that flexibility. And as Chuck said, the UW system administrative policies that need to be changed to provide that accessibility or that efficiency, rather, which we will look at in the policy review. In a number of areas, under budgeting, tuition and pricing, human resources, capital planning and construction, financial management, and purchasing and procurement, you'll find very specific suggestions about what we're asking for. So at times in the past, I think folks at the state have said with some justification, well, what do you mean by this flexibility? What do you really want? Well, this defines it pretty well, down to a pretty good level of detail. But I thought because the chancellors felt so strongly about all of their participation in this and being able to tell their local legislators, their local supporters, what the flexibilities would mean to them on their own campuses. And I think they'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. So I'm going to ask three of our chancellors to take a few minutes, each on their own campus, to say what these flexibilities would mean, why they want them, how they would use them if they had them. So I've asked Chancellor Van Galen and Chancellor Telfer and Chancellor Wells to do that. And why don't we start with Dean from UW River Falls, where it was 13 below this morning when I turned my radio on. Dean Van Galen.
Great to be down south. I think all the chancellors feel this is a very important opportunity, an important moment in time to gain more flexibilities for the system and for the individual campuses. We're called upon to be agile, entrepreneurial, responsive to regional needs, and the campuses really know that better than anyone. And I think the flexibilities suggested in this document could go a long way towards helping us be more effective on many levels. I think the GPR block grant concept is absolutely key, which would give us the ability to have much more flexibility in utilizing the state funds and the tuition funds and fees that come to the campuses. The money currently is very much siloed, and it becomes difficult for us to support our faculty and staff and really offer the highest quality education we can with an eye towards affordability and efficiency. I'll offer just one example of, I guess, a lack of flexibility and something that really struck me in the last year, and that relates to the UW River Falls Hudson Center. As you know, that was an educational learning center that we started in Hudson, Wisconsin, right on the western border of the state, to serve adult students, degree completion, to support the More Graduates for Wisconsin initiative. We had a very clear vision of what we wanted to do there. We had a clear idea of the type of space we wanted to lease. 3 classrooms close to I-94, which is a major artery, as you know. Space that is professional, that serves working adults. We toured several facilities within Hudson with a team of professionals who represented facilities, the deans and other academic professionals. And we visited a number of sites and really got an idea of what we needed. We wanted convenient parking. And so at that point, I encountered Department of Administration Form 8176, because I was under the impression that, the system was very supportive of this, that we could perhaps choose that space and move forward pretty quickly and efficiently with leasing the space for 3 to 5 years. Well, it turns out the process for that was protracted. You have to fill out the form, much detail on the space, the people, the needs. That goes to UW System, who reviews it, then goes to the Department of Administration for review by budget and their space planners, taking a number of weeks. And then it comes back to us. We had to have an individual from the Department of Administration come to Hudson, tour the same sites again that we had just toured, and he was a fine gentleman. He agreed with our conclusion, so then goes back to the Department of Administration to develop a contract. It undergoes legal review. Bottom line is we started in mid-April, and the last week of August, I believe it was, we had the lease signed, and we opened classes several days later. Fortunately, we had a contractor that, without a lease, was willing to build out the space for us. So in the end, it worked out. But to me, it was symbolic of trying to do something that is supportive of higher ed in Wisconsin, that is a little bit out of the box, and the difficulty involved in getting that done, and the cost in terms of personnel and opportunity costs of other things all of us could have been doing rather than dealing with that. So let me be clear, everyone involved did their job well in this process. It's just the process was, seemed to me a little bit over the top. One last point, if the lease rate would have been a few dollars higher, the governor of the state of Wisconsin would have had to sign off on the lease for 3 classrooms in Hudson, Wisconsin. So that's my example.
Thank you, Dave. Chancellor Telfer.
Thanks for this opportunity to chat with you. I want to address several different things, and I don't want to repeat everything that Dean said, but I want to talk to you a little bit about 3 or 4 different areas that are of concern to us. In 2009, you were on our campus and you visited Highland Hall. Highland Hall took us 10 years to build, okay? I referred at that time to a grant we had just received with the city of Whitewater to build the Whitewater Innovation Center at the Whitewater Technology Park. The first clients are moving in this weekend to that building, which started construction in April, and that whole project started 30 months before now. That happened in 30 months. We got the agreement. We built a building which took us about 7 months, 8 months to build, and we did it entirely away from the state process. The city built this because we did not feel if we were involved in building it, it could be built. That tells you a little bit about the flexibility we're seeking so that we, through the system, can build our buildings rather than having to go through a process that's just incredible. A related project, my second one that I want to mention, we have had fantastic success in our undergraduate research program in the sciences as well as other areas. Part of the problem with that is we remodeled in 2006, we remodeled and added 50% to our science building. We're full. We're overfull. We don't have room to put everyone. Now tell me, and I asked David, tell me when we're going to get a science building. Okay? And I tell our people when we're going to get a science building, it's about 2035. We have the students now. A related issue to that is we need more faculty to teach those folks. And so through the cooperation of the system, we've been figured out ways to, on a different fund, hire these folks. But we get involved in spending administrative time figuring out a way to make something that ought to happen, happen. And specifically with us right now, it's in the sciences. We need more science folks. We need more labs for them to work in. We need more labs for our students to work in. And the process doesn't allow us to go build something. Even if we were to have the money to do it, it doesn't allow us to go and build it. And that is something that really is preventing us from doing the kinds of things we need to do. The piece about the hiring is this position control is something we run up against each time. And as I say, we have ways to be able to hire people on a different fund, but it takes a tremendous amount of administrative time to make that happen. I also want to mention something about energy. We have 2 buildings that are either LEED certified or close to. We haven't got the final determination on that. We put solar on top of Highland. Our new Staron Hall, Residence Hall, is very efficient, and we save money, and we do not get any of that money. The money goes to the state. And part of the issue is we have records, and everybody else here will attest to that same thing. We've saved about 13% on energy over the last several years. It has all gone back to the state. With the block grant idea, we would be able to use that money to change out more of our lights, to save even more energy, and things that we need to do. But we can't because it goes back into the state system. I think it's something that we as a system can manage. We can do it much more nimbly, much more effectively, much less costly for everything that we do. And I think that's really the essence of this proposal, is to let us manage those things, because we can do it. We've demonstrated we can do it, but we keep running into these processes that are incredibly difficult.
Thank you, Dick. Chancellor Wells.
Okay. I guess the couple areas I want to make remarks have to do with, we're calling these more management flexibilities, more management degrees of freedom, but really what it's about is more leadership flexibility and leadership degrees of freedom. We need to let our system and our campuses and the people that make up our system and our campuses lead. This is about giving us the ability to lead. And I don't mean just the chancellors, but our faculty leaders, our staff leaders, our student leaders. They're outstanding. You've seen people here recognized all the Regents Excellence Awards of one sort or another. They're phenomenal people. They're deeply dedicated to what they do. They're creative. They're innovative. And so we have a philosophy on our campus that leadership isn't about a particular person with a title. It's about a behavior that you want to support all throughout your campus, because they can do phenomenal things to improve quality while doing things more efficiently. And I'm going to give you a very quick example on our campus of the kind, it's just one example, there are many, of the kinds of things that people can do if they have more freedom to lead in terms of providing the public good that we do. One of the individuals in our procurement area noticed that the state contract for 100% recyclable paper had dropped. It was the difference between the two contracts before was 30% recyclable paper was 20 or 25% less expensive than 100% recyclable paper, and he saw that it went down to only 5%. So he went to his supervisor and said, look, we might be able to go 100% recyclable paper. And so they went to some other people, some people on the sustainability team, and they said, well, we're going to reduce our use of paper at least 5 or 10% so we can make it cost neutral. The example I'm giving is this is an individual in one zone that went across several other zones, and they went and purchased a bunch of 100% recyclable paper. Then they tested it on all of our machines on campus to see if it would be any problem. They approached us in a very scholarly way. And then they went ahead and made a decision that we could do it. So we use 75 metric tons of paper in any given year, dropping it by 10 or 15, or about 5 to 10%. We saved 2,100 trees. Now that started with a person that has no title. It's a person that's in the trenches and works hard, but because we have this flexibility as much as we can on our campus, he came forward, other people who supported him, and he made an exceptionally good decision. So part of the problem, I think, here is that when you over-regulate people, you sap their ability, you sap their innovation to be able to do the things that we need them to do. So I'd like us to refer to this giving us leadership, flexibility, and degrees of freedom, and I think the return will be phenomenal. So for me, in this outstanding paper, of course the chancellor did something to do with it, but the system put it together real well, in all these various areas, to me the most important one is in the human resource management area, because that's what we're about. We're mostly about people. and their time and their effort and their energy, and let's respect them and give them a chance to do an even better job. So that's the one point. Then the final point is, this system, as many of you may know, but I've been around now 11 years in the system, and all around the country, is the most highly regarded system of higher education in the nation. No question about it. I talk to colleagues all around the country about what their system is like and what they're doing and so on, and they have great admiration for this system. And one of the things they admire most is how collaborative we are with each other, how we watch out for each other, how the chancellors watch out for each other's campus, how the deans, how the faculty. We just take that for granted in Wisconsin, how much we collaborate with each other, respect each other's institution, how we go to bat for each other, how I've gone to bat a number of times for UW-Madison, how UW-Madison's gone to bat for UW-Oshkosh. That's what makes this system work. And it has the lowest administrative overhead in the country. So what we have here is a highly regarded system, highly respected system, that's very, very good and can absolutely be great if these leadership flexibilities are allowed, both at the system level, and I applaud you for taking leadership to do that at the system level. I think we can use some of that at the campuses too. This whole idea of decentralizing those things that need to be decentralized close to the ground, makes a lot of sense. So the flexibilities, leadership flexibilities, need to be provided to every campus in the UW system when they're ready to take those flexibilities on. And I hope that that's what we're able to do. This is a great system. We need to keep it together, and we need to keep building on the distinctiveness of the system, and that's that we admire each other, respect each other, and we work very hard together. That's how we get it done. That's how come we are the lowest administrative overhead in the nation, is because we have to work together. If we don't, we won't be as good as we are.
Thank you, Rick. And let me assure the Regents that we will work very, very hard in this legislative session to get these flexibilities for all of our campuses at the level that each of them can handle. And let me open it up to see if any Regents have questions of our chancellors or others. Regent Smith?
Let me ask some questions just for timing-wise on when we're going to hear about some of this. Obviously, we've got just some news that the governor released yesterday, and I'm sure is getting a reaction on our campuses today. On the flexibility, when is that going to be? Is that part of the 22nd?
We would hope so, in his budget address.
Okay, and then we've the Badger Partnership, which we heard a lot about last month. We've had, I know, representatives making the rounds through the state and giving us details about that. Is that going to be part of the 22nd, too?
I think that will depend on what the governor decides to do. So we certainly hope that for Madison and for all our other campuses, we will get the flexibilities we're asking for.
Okay.
Regent Loftus.
Yes. I guess I need to understand this a little better, and maybe David Miller or whatever. You're asking the governor, we apparently are asking the governor and the legislature to authorize the Board of Regents to issue revenue bonds. Okay. I guess my first question is, we could have the authority to issue revenue bonds if only the statutes were changed?
Let me ask Associate Vice President Miller. David?
Certainly, this is the model that the authority that the hospital got when we spun off the hospital. Their bonding went through the state before, as well as general obligation bonds. Under their public authority model, the hospital itself issues the revenue bonds that are then backed by the operational revenue of the hospital authority.
Okay, so these university buildings that we would issue revenue bonds for, the revenue would come from?
About 60 to 65% of our current bonds that are issued as state general obligation bonds function as revenue bonds, in that the only source of the debt service is the operational revenue produced by the entity that's bonded, a residence hall, for example. For what we currently fund through general obligation bonds that is repaid by GPR dollars, currently the Department of Administration, through the budget and the legislature, add GPR to our base budget to pay that debt service. This model envisions, in this block grant model, that the GPR would come to the institutions as a block grant of general fund revenue, and out of their base funding, they would determine how much of their general fund revenue support they could allocate to debt. So those would also be revenue bonds issued by the Board of Regents, but part of that would come from their base GPR budget.
Well, the basic question is, do we want the authority to issue revenue bonds? I guess the second thing is, and that would, so we would get out from under general obligation bonds, which all of the taxpayers of this whole state are responsible for, and we go to revenue bonds that campus is responsible for, based on some gift of a block grant from the legislature?
That is one model.
It's a pretty bad model.
Well, it is the model by which almost every university operates. And the state doesn't provide any revenue for all of our program revenue bonding now. We have to provide all of that from our own generated resources. So it's not unusual, it's not uncommon, it's actually very common. The other model would be to continue to access general obligation bonding if complete authority for the building program were delegated to the Board of Regents, and we still access general obligation bonding. That could be another model that would work.
How does this work technically? We go to the market as the Board of Regents, and David would sign off on the bond issue, or what happens?
That's how the hospital authority does it, or we could continue to use the Office of State Capital Finance.
And the hospital authority has its own rating. But, you know, if you want to see the purest form of running your own business, that's the hospital. We're worried about days cash on hand, days accounts receivable, capitalization ratios. By God, it's a business. And that's why it works, and that's why Moody says it works.
And yes, we would have our own rating, yes, like most universities.
Regent Davis.
I've been on this board since 2003, and it seems to me since the beginning of my tenure, I have been very, very much in favor of flexibilities. And I have to say that the articulation represented in this letter and supportive documentation is excellent, in my opinion, for a number of reasons. Number one, clarity. Number two, it just leads you to what has to change. And it makes some really strong and persuasive arguments for each and every one of the areas of flexibility. And as supplemented by Chancellor Wells' comment around leadership and that emphasis about allow us to lead, I'm really hopeful that we will succeed where we have not succeeded in all these years. I just think hats off to all who prepared this, all who contributed to it, and I hope it works, because I really do think in these days and times that it is about leadership, and if you and inclusive of if you find ways to, as Chancellor Telford shared examples of saving money, you should be able to reallocate to save more money or to support priorities that you have and be held accountable for the stewardship of those resources. I think it's, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful, so I want to enthusiastically support where we're going with this.
And I just emphasize it was built from the ground up with all the chancellors working on it in that collaborative way that I think the system works well at. Regent Menendez.
Yes, thank you. Maybe it's because I haven't been on the board that long, but when you were talking about flexibilities, I thought maybe I'd missed something, but evidently no one really had set it forth in a document, and so I appreciate getting that. My question is this, coming from northern Wisconsin, and no respect to anybody, any of the chancellors, disrespect to any of them, I've been hearing about the Badger Partnership. And I'll tell you what, no one's been able to tell me what the heck that is either to this point. I don't know what the Badger Partnership is. We had a presentation in Eau Claire a week or so ago, and really the person making the presentation couldn't articulate what the Badger Partnership is. I'm encouraged to hear that all the chancellors believe that we should work as one system, because I think that's what it is and that's what it should be doing. If there's a separate, something different than this for Madison that's being talked about, I don't know if I'm in favor of it or not in favor of it, but I'd like to know what it is, because people that I live with are coming up and saying, what does this mean? Are we going back to 1970 and before? Are my kids going to be able to go to school at Madison? What's going to happen to our schools up here? So there's some fear, because people don't know. So I guess what I'd like to know is, are we going to get something that tells us what the Badger Partnership is? And maybe I just missed it because I didn't understand it at the presentation. But I'm encouraged that we've got this saying what we think flexibility should be from your perspective, and I appreciate that. That's just a comment I'm making and asking for some direction.
Well, Chancellor Martin is here, and I can let her comment if she wants.
The Badger Partnership has been under discussion for over a year, and all of the detail that you find in this proposal that you like so much has been articulated as part of the Badger Partnership. It has been presented completely openly throughout the state, on my campus, to you all, and it's no different than what has finally been advanced on the instigation of the chancellors for the system as a whole. Did the Badger Partnership aim at being separate from the system? No. Might it be, given the lateness of a system proposal for some of this concretely? That will be up to the governor. If we think flexibility is so important, and I think we're in an emergency situation where the house is burning, and I hope we won't argue about how to paint a building that's burning. If the governor is supportive, as he said publicly, of the Badger Partnership, and if he moves forward with that, which I hope he will, because I hate to see what will happen to UW-Madison or the other campuses if there's no flexibility. I hope that it will include flexibilities for the other campuses, either now or going forward. But the Badger Partnership has been on the record for well over a year.
Well, I think the message is we're all in favor of getting these partnerships to the level for each campus that it needs them and wants to exercise them, and that's the argument we'll make to the governor. Joe?
I was at a presentation on the Badger Partnership in La Crosse. I thought it was very good, and I know Regent Smith was there as well, and we followed that very closely. Now, there's a wide range of flexibilities, as you saw in the document. Different campuses would be interested in different things, and when you think about the difference in the scope of UWL and UW-Madison, clearly the procurement issues and some of the personnel are not going to be as significant for us. But I think the thing that we're all interested in, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, is tuition. And what I say is the responsibility to do more with tuition. And you know this in terms of the differential tuition programs that you've been asked to approve and you've been briefed on. It's just vitally important to us at a time when state support is declining to have that ability to do more with tuition and be reasonable about it. And I thought Sandy Baum's presentation yesterday was particularly timely because you get at some of the complexities around that. But we fully support the Badger Partnership, and I think my colleagues would say the same thing. You know, that tends to get a little bit more attention because of the prominence of UW-Madison, but certainly we are seeking the very same kinds of things that are being sought here. It's interesting, there has been this undercurrent. Does this mean, you know, you alluded to it, Regent Menedides, that Madison is separate from the system, and, you know, there's been speculation and all these kinds of things. And I'm reminded of when I was dean over at Winona State University in Minnesota. And in Minnesota, as many of you know, has two systems. There's the University of Minnesota, and then all the comprehensives are in the Minnesota State colleges and universities. And at Winona State, we were doing a little bit of marketing research on should we change the name of the university a little bit, because some of the institutions are Minnesota State Mankato, others are called Moorhead State, we were Winona State, and the public came back to us with, yes, we think your name should be University of Minnesota at Winona. Yeah, okay, some got the joke. It shows you the power of the flagship campus and the power of the brand. And so I think it's vitally important, speaking as Chancellor of UW-La Crosse, that we're called the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, and that as a system we all benefit from the many great things that happen here. And I will just be very forthcoming with you. I'd heard all about Madison before I came out to the Midwest, and when I was interviewed here, it was pretty exciting to sit upstairs and look out on this campus, and I drive around here, and I think you've got some of the smartest people in the world that live in this city. So hopefully, this doesn't get carried out to sort of an extreme, and that we are able to get these flexibilities, and that the governor and others will say, yes, we can't give you the level of state support you're accustomed to, but we are going to give you the responsibility to manage through those challenges and do the right thing. And what Sandy said yesterday, that's really what we're looking at, is how do we keep the resources we need in place and still make it available for all students. And that will be through really complex financial aid discussions. And why I had to leave the room earlier was I was talking to our foundation board down in La Crosse, couldn't be there, and I was saying how important their work's going to be in terms of raising money for scholarships, and that will just be our singular focus, really, in this new environment. So I just wanted to add my thoughts there, and thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. Chancellor Wells.
There are a lot of smart, talented people in Oshkosh, too. Well, I'm sorry, And Joe, the ones in La Crosse are Oshkosh alums. So, anyway, I'm teasing. That's why, we got a great sense of humor. It's a great system. But I want to join Danae Davis. I'm kind of part of the historian of the chancellors, being the second longest serving. Chuck's here twice as long as I am. But I want to make sure everybody understands that these, as Regent Davis said, these management flexibilities, leadership flexibilities that are in this document have been argued for 5 or 6 years even before I came here when Catherine Lau was here. We've continued to try to get them. They're not new. Now, Madison has done a wonderful job articulating them, communicating them, but they've always been there, and we've always attached them in one way or another. We just haven't been successful at getting them. So I think Madison's Badger's partnership really got us moving, and as Biddy said, got the rest of us together with the system staff to really make it clear and to the point. But these have been around a long time, and we've been arguing for them a long time. This is not new.
All right. Well, thank you all, and we'll keep you posted on how things develop on these flexibility fronts. I'm going to, in the interest of time, shorten down my report a little bit, but there are 1 or 2 things I did want to mention. I want to remind the board of the special event on civility and everyday life coming up. UW-Oshkosh is preparing to host this special UW System Conference on February 24th and 25th. So our thanks to Chancellor Rick Wells and his team for all their good work in pulling this conference together. It will provide a forum for leadership teams from all of our institutions to discuss the practical meaning of civility on our campuses and in the wider society, too. So we look forward to a productive meeting, and I want to extend an invitation to members of this board. If you would like to be part of the conference, certainly we would love to have you. You'll find more information about the event in your packets. Again, it's February 24th and 25th, or I'm sure Chancellor Wells would be happy to answer your questions about it. There's a lot of good news here that I will send out in writing to all of you, and in the interest of time, just not go through it all. But I had one thing I did want to do. Goes back to the exchange between the 2 chancellors about who's a newcomer and who's not.
I'd like to note a big milestone in the career of our Chancellor at UW Stout. This past week, Chancellor Charles Sorensen officially became the longest-serving head of UW Stout. In fact, there have only been 7 leaders of that institution dating back to 1891, and the previous record holder was Burton E. Nelson, who served from 1923 to 1945. During Chancellor Sorensen's time at Stout, enrollment has grown 32% to a record 9,339 in September 2010. The number of academic majors has nearly doubled to 40, and he has overseen 11 major building and remodeling projects, including the new Jarvis Hall Science Wing and Millennium Hall. He's led the effort to create a digital campus culture there through the innovative eScholar laptop program, and he helped to establish the Stout Technology Park. Under Chancellor Sorensen, the Board of Regents designated UW Stout as Wisconsin's Polytechnic University, and in 2001, UW Stout became the first recipient in higher education of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. So this is a big milestone, and we just wanted to congratulate Chuck and thank him for all his work. I think, Regent Pruitt, I can stop there, but before I turn the floor back over to you, I thought we all might want to remind ourselves that Monday is Valentine's Day, and with that in mind, I thought we could all profit from reminding ourselves of one of the basics for keeping romantic relationships strong. So a 4-line poem entitled Relationships Toast will do that nicely, and here it is. To keep your love overflowing in the loving cup, when you are wrong, admit it. When you are right, shut up. Regent Pruitt?
I was going to say, we're still in 5.
Pauline liked to hear that, Regent.
We will move on and hear the report of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. I'll call upon Regent Smith to present.
It's hard to follow up on. But we did. We held our annual investment forum where we asked the public, students, to provide comments on our university trust funds. Attendance in the past has ranged from many people to none the last couple of years, and this year 2 people actually registered to speak, but no one showed up. So that was our investment forum. We did hear from about 2 reports that were in your materials, the annual financial report and the auditor's opinion. Julie Gordon presented some comments on our financial report, and State Auditor Jan Mueller and Audit Director Carolyn Stittelberg talked about the auditor's communication. We asked the committee for a follow-up on some of management's response and changes in procedures due to the LAB's findings at our April meeting. We got back on differential tuition. At our meeting, we had 3 proposals, 1 from River Falls and 2 from Superior. One was called the Falcon Promise Proposals, the one from River Falls, and again, the goal was there to improve student retention and student success. It's a phase-in for 3 years. It would go from $72 to $100 in 2011-2012, $130 in 12-13, and $160 in 13-14. We had the past Student Senate President, Lee Monson, there to talk about it, and the student consultation process and the changes that were made pursuant to the students' input. Committee approved that resolution of the River Falls differential tuition. Superior had 2. One is the UW Superior Experience, which we've already approved in the past, and this was asking for an increase. It would increase from $207 to $237 per year. That was approved. The other one from UW Superior was a new one, which was called the Natural Sciences Differential. This would add a $12 per credit charge to all courses in UW Superior Department of Natural Sciences beginning in the fall of 2011. We heard from the student government president, Jessica Duffy, and Joe Stinson, representing graduate students, again talking about the ways the students were involved in the consultation process for these differentials, and the committee approved both those resolutions for UW Superior. We heard from Assistant Director Joshua Smith with regard to audit plan. That again is in your materials, all the upcoming audits planned for 2011. And we were fortunate to hear from UW River Falls Internal Auditor Richard Stinson on the planning levels at that particular campus. We had Joshua Smith also presented a operations review on student involvement and consultation in the allocation of segregated fees. This is something that Aaron had requested, and we did a follow-up on. If you read the materials, very extensive as summarizing the student involvement in the consultation in the allocation of segregated university fees. Regent Wingate indicated the document had been shared with student leaders and stated it would be a helpful tool, I think, to understand the role of students on each campus, which it's good to have that summary there. We had two reports from Ed Meacham, one on the system strategic plans for major IT projects, and one on the status report on major IT projects, which, as you recall, is mandated by the legislature for us to hear that. Debbie Durkin gave a report on gifts, grants, and contracts. The total gifts, contracts, and grants for the period second quarter were $855 million, which was a decrease of $36.5 million over the same period the prior year. Federal awards decreased $6.8 million, and non-federal awards decreased $29.7 million. We had a report on some of our non-resident tuition programs from Lynn Paulson, and this was on three different programs that are special tuition programs for non-resident students, which were put in place in response to the drop in non-resident students that we had earlier in mid-2000s. These programs include the Tri-State Initiative, the Midwest Student Exchange Program, and the Return to Wisconsin program. The committee approved Resolution 12F3, which makes the Return to Wisconsin tuition program permanent, and it permits other UW system institutions to participate in the program if they so choose. We had two resolutions from UW-Madison, one granting authority to recruit a dean of the law school, and the other granting authority to recruit a dean of the School of Business. Both recruitments would be at a salary above 75% of the UW assistant president's salary, and that's why it was before us. Deputy General Counsel Chris Ashley, we had a resolution which you saw in your materials regarding an amendment to Wisconsin Administrative Code relating to the reinstatement period for sick leave benefits. Simply brought us in line with those established for classified staff, and the committee approved that resolution. Finally, we had a status update on from Senior Vice President Michael Morgan on the HRS program. He reported that a comprehensive readiness assessment is in place to ensure all aspects of the project are ready for the expected launch in April of this year. He reviewed in detail the components of the readiness assessment along with several of the key dates, which are approaching rapidly, and by the time we next meet we won't be having the HRS probably report in March, but April will be there. On behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit, I now move the adoption of Resolution 12C1, the UW River Falls differential tuition, 12C2, the UW Superior Experience differential tuition, 12C3, the UW Superior undergraduate differential tuition, 12F3, extension of the Return to Wisconsin program, 12F4, authorization to recruit a limited appointee, the Dean of the Law School, 12F5, authorization to recruit a limited appointee, Dean of the School of Business, and 12F6, approval to submit rules to the legislature revisions of Wisconsin Administrative Code, Section 19, Chapter 19, relating to reinstatement period of sick leave benefits.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? Is there any comment on any of the items? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motions are agreed to.
Please by report.
Okay, thank you. I will now call upon Regent Bartel to present the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Capital Planning and Budget Committee began by meeting jointly with Business, Finance, and Audit to hear an annual report on city and county financial support of UW colleges. Local municipalities have provided $9.4 million of financial support to the colleges in 2010. We heard from Chancellor Ray Cross, Vice Chancellor Steve Wildick, and UW Rock County Dean and Campus CEO Diane Pillard, who provided us with an interesting and enlightening report on the excellent partnership that has developed between UW Rock County and the County Board of Supervisors and the County Administrator in that county. It was very impressive what they have accomplished together. And she commented particularly that the county feels an investment interest in the UW Rock County, and therefore it is their place, and they're willing to support it. And I think that is an attitude and a philosophy that generally carries over through UW colleges. The committee then took up a number of resolutions, and I will review them with you, and then we'll present them as consent agenda items. Resolution 1.3.C requests authority to enter into a 5-year lease of about 19,000 square feet of space in a facility located in the town of Blue Mountains, which is west of Madison, for UW-Madison Graduate School. It is a quarantine and holding facility of non-human primates required for researchers on campus in the primate labs. The build-out cost will be about $300,000, and the annual operations cost will be about $625,000, and these will be paid by the graduate school primarily with federal funds provided to the Wisconsin National Primate Research Center. Resolution 1.3.D, brought by UW-Madison, requests approval to acquire 75 acres of land in the town of Middleton for expansion of the UW Research Park 2. This acquisition, at a cost of about $5.7 million, will provide additional 16 sites for at least 1 million square feet of buildings, 100 companies, and 2,500 employees. Revenues from the research park will service the purchase money debt. Resolution 1.3.E requests authority to accept a gift of 6 acres of land, which are appraised at a total of about $350,000, from the University of Wisconsin Foundation. Donors of this land were Lloyd and Bernice Durant, who I understand were professors emeriti at UW-Madison. I didn't know them, but they've been very generous in supporting UW-Madison. This is a parcel of undeveloped wooded property located adjacent to conservancy land already owned by the Board of Regents and managed by the UW Arboretum. The gift will add a portion of a pond, shoreline, and upland oak woods to the conservancy. Resolution 1.3.F, brought by UW Hospitals and Clinics Authority, seeks approval to construct an autopsy and pathology suite located in the Wisconsin Institutes for Medical Research building, the WIMR, so-called, on the far west side of Madison campus, at a total cost of about $11 million. Program revenue operating funds come from the UW Hospital and Clinics. The suite will be constructed in the planned wedge, or between the fins, of towers 2 and 3 of the WIMR building. This space will provide UW Hospital and Clinics and the Department of Pathology with a facility to perform medical and pathology services when the VA hospital, which currently has lease arrangements with the UW, terminates those leases within the next several years. Resolution 1.3.G, which is brought by UW Green Bay, requests authority to use funding provided by UW Foundation and a federal grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Agency to purchase 3 parcels of land totaling about 62 acres for a purchase price of $335,000, which happens to be the lesser of 2 appraisals of those parcels. They consist of wetlands, woodlands, and access acreage that will link existing conservancy lands and create opportunities to study long-term effects on bird migrations, water quality, and evolving habitat communities. And finally, Resolution 1.3.H, which is brought by UW Whitewater, requests authority to adjust the budget and construct the multi-sports facility Phase 3 project on that campus. This project will provide a two-story structure located within the university's multi-sport facility to support the university's softball program. The structure will house a press box, a team locker, shower room, coach's office, and locker room and public restrooms. The building will be used primarily during the university's softball season, but will be used year-round for office functions, meetings, recruiting, and other functions. It will be partially funded through the use of a SUFAC-approved $5.22 annual increase in student-segregated fees for a 10-year period. These 6 resolutions were passed unanimously by the committee, and I now move adoption of resolutions 1.3C, D, E, F, G, and H.
Is there a second? Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Mr. President, in addition to hearing from Vice President Miller about the Building Commission's approval of $32 million for projects at its December meeting, the committee had a discussion which I would like to just briefly summarize for the Board of Regents and for those from the campuses who are listening about the budgeting for capital projects. Committee, well, let me begin by saying it is certainly well known to the Board of Regents and everyone here that where a capital project is able to put together gift funds to help pay for that project, the project moves up in priority and has a much better chance of ultimately being funded. It's also well known, I think, to this board and to the campuses that we look with great scrutiny on projects that require increases in segregated fees, student segregated fees, in order to fund it. We make sure that the SUFAC process has been followed and that students truly know what the project is all about. It has occasionally been the case that the committee has received a capital project that includes a significant gift fund component, and as the project has moved forward, the gift funds just didn't show up. And the budget is amended to add segregated fees to the project, either introduce them to the project or increase them. And this is troublesome to the committee because it's sort of has become a situation where gift funds are sometimes used as a placeholder while the campus tries to raise money. And I think that it should be said that the committee feels that we need to take a closer look at a project that includes a significant gift fund component to make sure that those gift funds are really going to be there, or at least mostly there. Now, I realize that because of the length of time that some of these projects take, it's very hard to anticipate what the economic situation is going to be, what the philanthropic situation is going to be at the time that those funds are needed. But I think that a realistic look at what gift funds are available for the project needs to be taken early on, and we can't just use student-segregated fees to fill in gaps all the time. We didn't take any action on this, but it is something that I think the Regents should know, and certainly the campuses should know. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Regent Bartel. I will call upon Regent Crane to present the report of the Education Committee. Regent Crane.
The Education Committee, as usual, met all afternoon yesterday. We seem to have a real ability to do that, and I'd like to say that we very much appreciate the presence of the provost, most of the provosts for our discussions. Has been extremely helpful to us. I also want to thank the leadership from the administration for preparing us well, and I'd like to mention that Bob Yilkish substantially prepared this report this morning in the absence of Rebecca Karoff, and we appreciate that. The members of the Education Committee are Regents Vasquez, Davis, Renee Davis, and Evers, and in the past has also included Regent Schwallenberg, and we missed her presence yesterday. The first item was placed on the consent agenda immediately, and it was the approval of a program of Master of Fine Arts and Design at UW-Stout. We then spent considerable time on charter school authorizations and renewals, 4 of which were charter schools in the under University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and the 5th one was at University of Wisconsin Parkside. Three of the charter schools were up for renewal of their contracts, and 2 were authorizations of new schools, and it's probably appropriate to mention that those 2, both of which are in the UW-Milwaukee group of charter schools, they would be added there, but there are 2 others that will not be continuing under that program, so it does not increase the number of charter schools in the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Present with us, of course, was Dr. Bob Catman, who is well known to us and here frequently as we talk about the UWM charter schools. There were 2 renewals that were presented to us, Seeds of Health Elementary and the Milwaukee College Preparatory School, Metcalf Park. I should mention that in every case there were people from the boards and associated with the schools that we discussed yesterday present, and many of whom participated in the discussion at various points. Both of those schools were approved very quickly. They both perform exceedingly well. The Seeds of Health Elementary serves a student population that is 90% Latino and 98% low income, while Milwaukee College Preparatory School, Metcalf Park, serves a student population that's 99% African American and 82% low income. Those 2 were unanimously approved. Then Dr. Catman presented the information on the 2 new charter schools, both of which were approved, and one of which, though, will not be on the consent agenda because it was a divided vote. The Milwaukee College Preparatory School, Lindsay Heights, was originally planned to be a replication of the Milwaukee College Prep Metcalf Park School. However, instead the campus, which is composed of 2 buildings, is going to separate the students into by gender. This was discussed with some difference of opinion on what the evidence shows as to the success of that, but it was a good discussion, and the committee did unanimously approve the contract for this school. The other new school, the Milwaukee Scholars Charter School, would be working with a for-profit organization, National Heritage Academy. Dr. Catman explained that the National Heritage Academy has a strong record of success nationally. We did have a person with us yesterday whose name I cannot remember. Matt. And
then it was Paul Sweeney. It was Paul Sweeney.
And then Paul Sweeney was here, who was one of the board, would be one of the board members. National and present with in the room today is Mark Murata, who is supportive of this proposal. and he was not here yesterday, but is today. National Heritage Academy has opened 68 schools in similar cities. The committee did approve the contract for this school on a 3-to-1 vote, and Regent Evers opposed that vote. There were other things in which other things that we discussed about issues such as the diversity of teachers at the charter schools, the success of students as they move on to high school and college, and the number of applicants for charter schools. There was also a request made to share further assessment data with the Education Committee in the future. We then went on to, I also want to mention that Dr. Catman is retiring at the end of this school year, and he will be present with us at the UW Milwaukee meeting in June. And he expects to be introducing his replacement and make some remarks at that time. We then went on to the other charter school that was on our agenda. Dr. Paul Halbrick, the director of the UW Parkside Charter School Office, brought before us the renewal of UW Parkside's one charter school, the 21st Century Preparatory School. The charter application for the 21st Century School included an expectation that the academic performance of African American students would exceed that of their peers attending schools in the Racine Unified School District. The school is making good progress toward that goal, and the results for the school's 8th grade African American students was especially strong. Discussion also focused on past discipline issues, and Dr. Halbrick noted the importance of leadership stability, which has not always been present in this school, but is very strong at this point. Senior Vice President Rebecca Martin noted that at the initial authorization of board meeting was her first board meeting as provost at the UW Parkside campus, so that she commended this school for the progress that has been made. And the committee unanimously did approve a 5-year contract extension for this school. I again want to mention that we do appreciate the number of supporters of these schools who do come when we have these discussions. So the approval, I do want to make one other comment, which I made at the end of this discussion yesterday. I think that there still is discussion to be had by this board periodically about what the responsibility of the Board of Regents is for these individual schools. Because we end up talking quite a bit about them individually, and yet it's not the same kind of organization to it that other things that are clearly within our responsibility. So this is something that continues to be attention for me at any rate. So I will be presenting all of the charter schools on a consent agenda with the one exception being Resolution 11B4, approving the charter school contract with the Milwaukee Scholars Charter School. I think I will present that motion right now, and then we'll deal with the consent ones later. So I would move that.
Okay, so you were moving the adoption
Resolution
of
11B4,
the approval of the Scholars
Milwaukee
Charter
Scholars Charter School.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on that? Regent Evers.
And thank you. And I did oppose this proposition yesterday, and I'll oppose it again today. It was a tough call. It wasn't something that was
kind of this philosophical angst that some people have around charter schools. I voted for everyone that's come before our committee up until this time. My concern was around the issue of the local board's ability to be a board. What we have here is a local board that has essentially become a franchise of National Heritage Academies. I don't have any problem with National Heritage Academies. But what my concern is that the local board, I don't think, had kind of thoroughly thought through what their role is going to be in this education experiment with this charter school. So I opposed it because I just when I ask questions and I listen to other people ask questions, I think that role was clearly undefined, and I think, in turn, we heard from several other really good charter schools yesterday, and they all talked about the importance of the local board making decisions, being able to be involved with personnel decisions if necessary, and that just isn't the case in this situation. And so I will continue to vote no.
Can I ask a question? Tony, is there anything in writing that defines the role of the local board in the contract or in?
Well, they talk about in the documents basically contracting with the national
agreement. Yeah.
Right. So, and I don't know if it's something fundamentally going to be a problem. Maybe only with me on all kind of outside authorizers. I don't know that, but I do know that the charters that have been very successful in UWM have had strong local boards that have been involved and have shown persistence over time, and this is kind of a handoff to a national organization.
Regent Vasquez. I was the one that initiated the discussion by asking questions about that. I don't have any problems with heritage, and quite honestly, I don't have problems whether it's a for-profit or not-for-profit in terms of the contract organization. I did have some questions about the governance relationship in my questions were just to be given a sense of assurance that the 501c3 organization that was created and the board that was created clearly understand that by virtue of it being a board, notwithstanding the fact that it's contracting all of its what the organization will do, is clearly, very clearly stipulated even in Wisconsin statutes, that at the end of the day, it's ultimately responsible for that corporation. It can't, just because it writes a contract, it cannot just simply say, well, gee, it's Heritage, it's their problem, not ours. We're just the board here in name. And so that was the thing that I wanted to make sure that there was a clarity of understanding that the board was not, by virtue of signing a contract, saying, good luck, Heritage, call us only when it's good news, don't call us when it's bad news, because we're not running the organization. I did vote in favor of the charter, much more so under the following. One is that I do have a significant amount of confidence and trust in the UW office that it will clearly exercise its oversight responsibility of monitoring the charter, and that and I think that that's where we as a Board of Regents must hold our own authorizer accountable to ensure that regardless of how that charter is going to be on a day-to-day managed, that our authorizer clearly is assuring us that it is being run in a responsible manner. And I think at least the response that I heard yesterday from Bob is that he clearly understands that and will be having ongoing, very good discussion and monitoring of the Board of Directors and its relationship of its oversight role. So with that, then I did feel confident and comfortable in supporting the charter. I don't think that at this point, and what further also helped for me was that apparently Heritage does seem to have a good track record and has a good record. So with that, I would continue to vote in support of the granting of the charter.
Can I point out one piece of information? At this point, it may be of interest to some people that in the materials on this, on pages 4 and 5, it lists the board members.
Vision window.
I'm just wondering if I could make other members of the committee about the local board, because at least to me, when the state superintendent comes saying one of these charters may not meet the qualifications he has for a charter, I listen to that, and it may be worthy to delay approval until we get that kind of information. And not other members of the committee feel like they have the adequate information and they feel comfortable with that charter.
Regent Davis.
I would like to, with the indulgence of the board, ask Mark Murata to respond to the question, at least to the question of what is the governance anticipated with this particular local board. I do have a perspective, but I just think that there's a person who represents the organization that could possibly lend some factual information about that. Mark, if you're willing.
Mr. Murata, welcome to the Board of Regents.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Regent Davis. And without going through the entire contract, which I don't think anybody would like to do at this point.
Sure. No.
The one provision in the contract, which I think answers the question that Regent Evers raised, is that today, tomorrow, next month, the month after, the board, which is a really strong board. I would say that if you look at the board members, this board stacks up to any board, and probably even corporate board in the state. And this organization, as Regent Vasquez mentioned, it has a proven track record throughout the country of taking students from certain levels of proficiency, which are fairly low levels of proficiency for many students that are minority students and free and reduced lunch students, to levels of proficiency that exceed state and national averages. So this is a great opportunity for Wisconsin, for Milwaukee, to have an organization like this committed to increasing educational opportunities for kids in Milwaukee. So with that, one provision in the contract is that the board can terminate National Heritage Academies at any time, at will. So if the board disagrees with anything that National Heritage Academies does, it can, at will, without cause, terminate them. And National Heritage Academies is obligated under the contract to continue to manage the operation, if the board wants them to, throughout the remainder of the school year. The building is owned by National Heritage Academies. The Milwaukee Scholars, a 501c3, leases the building. That lease will continue. So I don't know, to me, I don't know what could be any more clear than that provision. And we can go through other provisions, but it seems to me that if you can terminate somebody at will if you disagree with them, that seems to me to be a fair amount of power. And there's no question that that's a provision in the agreement.
Thank you, Mark. Regent Evers.
Just to express a bit of frustration here. Yesterday when the vote was taken, Mr. Murata wasn't there to explain, and others were, in my opinion, inadequately represented what we're hearing now. Second of all, so as a regent, that kind of annoys me. Second of all, just having the only ability to say, go away, national heritage, rather than, as our other charter schools do, make mid-course corrections, new personnel. As Mark said, I believe Mark said, and maybe we can get some more new information today on this. The ability to make course corrections, does the board have that ability? Does that board have the ability to demand that? Yesterday, the answer was no. Is the answer different today?
Regent Davis,
I don't
and then
know
we'll
that
let
I don't know
Mark
that
talk.
the answer was so clearly no, not on the part of the people who represented both the board and National Heritage. I mean, I respectfully disagree with you on that, Tony, because I didn't hear no. I heard, and as Regent Vasquez said, I also heard Bob Catman, Dr. Catman, assure us, which I think is really a critical point, and I would like to reiterate it, that he will make sure that the contract covers our interests from a standpoint of what happens to kids in that school. So I really do think that the authority of this board, 5 members as it may be, or 6, or whatever it is not in a practical sense any different, and this is my answering you, Regent Wingate, any different than the Milwaukee College Prep Board or any of the other charter boards that we're aware of in terms of how they operate. I happen to know just about every one of these individuals, and there is just no way that they're not going to step up to the plate and make sure that the investment that they chose to make in bringing this clearly successful education organization to our community where our kids really do need help and I got to close my loop, what I'm trying to say is that this group is very much committed to the ultimate aim, which is to improve the proficiency of our kids in a very, very tough area of the city. So I don't see any of them walking away. I don't see, and combined with the assurances of Mr. Kaywood on behalf of National Heritages and their experience, which backs up what his word said, it just seems to me that it's not a risk. It's not a risk. I mean, so I just respectfully disagree with the comment that this board is different than the other boards in any material way. The contracts are going to be, that are holding them accountable are exactly the same. And we have the ability, if we have some specific areas that we want him to include in, that is Bob Catman, we can certainly do that, but I don't know that that's going to be necessary either. So.
Oh, I'm sorry, Regent Vasquez. I think that the discussion is a very good one. And I don't know, it's my understanding that we had a previous charter that was under contract and that it's now leaving us, or 2 that are moving. What I like about this discussion is that not knowing what had happened before, that at least from my perspective, we are making it very clear through our discussion here that future charters that may come before this body, and I expect that there will continue to be similar ones where organizations are going to be contracting for the actual delivery of the charter itself, that at least as a board we're making it very clear that we are very attentive to the way that it is being structured, and that we would not be taking kindly to a board of directors that was either very hastily put together or that it is very apparent that it's going to be a very weak governing board. And I don't care even if it's one of the most prestigious and most successful private educational management organizations. If the board of directors is not a strong board of directors, I don't think this board should allow that to move forward. In this particular case, I am very comfortable that it is a very strong group of individuals. I do think that this discussion serves a purpose, and the purpose is that I think we're making a very bold statement, or a very clear statement. If you have a very weak board, if you have a very hastily put together board, don't rely on just the strength of the contractor that you're going to be contracting with to immediately believe that you're going to be approved. And so for me, I think that this was the right organization to precisely have this kind of a discussion, because it is a very strong group of individuals. It's a very, coupled with a very strong management organization. And so for me, it has served that purpose. So again, I will continue to support moving this particular charter forward.
Regent Falbo.
Just a quick comment, and I wasn't part of the discussion yesterday, so I don't know what went on, but if I was in the process of starting a charter school, I know the majority of these people, I would want them on my board. They're strong people.
Other comments, discussion? If not, are we prepared to vote? Let's just first vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Regent Walsh is abstaining. It would appear that the ayes have it, and this contract is agreed to. Regent Crane?
I would just like to close out that conversation again by saying I think that the complexity of these issues and the process and the responsibility of this board is something that is something to be wrestled with. Regent Evers used the term charter angst, and I didn't know whether he was saying that wasn't who he is, but it might be who I am. And it's because of the rule that we have here, which is different from other kinds of responsibilities that we have, it seems to me. I will be presenting the consent agenda items at the end of my report, but let me make a couple of other comments about the rest of our meeting, which was important. We heard a presentation on pre-college programs, which was one of the priority areas we had identified for this year. Focused on pre-college programs for multicultural and disadvantaged students. This is a very small slice of the hundreds of pre-college programs that are throughout our system for middle and high school students. Associate Vice President Vicki Washington delineated for us the different kinds of pre-college programs for multicultural and disadvantaged students and reminded us that different programs serve different purposes. From summer camps designed to develop aspiration, to extensive year-round programs intended to improve preparation and achievement in high school, to bridge programs designed to ease the transition from secondary to post-secondary education. She described some of the professional development her office is providing to campus personnel responsible for pre-college programming, especially around program evaluation. Of particular interest to the committee yesterday was the use of the LOGIC model, a program used to improve pre-college program development, planning, and implementation and assessment. We heard from Ruby Paredes, who is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Climate at UW-Madison's pre-college programming, and she focused particularly on the PEOPLE program, a program that has grown from 66 students when it began in 1999 to over 1,600 students today. We also heard from Barbara Stewart, Associate Dean for Campus Climate and Diversity, and Kate Oganowski, Program Coordinator of Pre-College Programs at UW-La Crosse, who described the overall organization of their campuses worked on a variety of pre-college programs, and the successes and the challenges. The use of college students as mentors in pre-college programs has had a especially positive impact on the retention of these students and presumably on those mentors as well. Both UW-Madison and UW-La Crosse increasingly view their pre-college programming as an integral part of their inclusive excellence work. Senior Vice President Martin noted that the work that has been going on the assessment of UW pre-college programs. It's very important to know how many pre-college students actually reach higher education and then the success that they have there. And the UW system administration has been building assessment expertise to work with the campuses on these important issues. There were two elements to Senior Vice President Martin's report. included a regular feature of the Education Committee, and then we heard UW La Crosse Provost Kathleen Finken describe her campus's inclusive excellence work. She provided an overview of the set of comprehensive strategies and actions being undertaken to make exclusive excellence a guiding framework for the entire campus, and it was a kind of an astounding report on how pervasive it was at that campus. This is a multi-phase process, and UW La Crosse has determined specific goals, actions to reach these goals, and measures by which to determine if they're being met appropriately. She noted the importance of having inclusive excellence in front of people on a regular basis. And UW La Crosse also has developed an online registry of what different units are doing within the campus and doing student exit surveys and surveys of faculty and staff to determine employee satisfaction in these areas. The committee was impressed with this presentation and asked about student involvement in the process. And Barbara Stewart noted that students are involved and they hope to have more student involvement in the summer. We also had a report on the ways in which campuses are being more intentional in helping students complete their undergraduate degrees in 4 years, a topic we've heard more about lately. The committee heard from Dwayne Ford, Dean of the College of Business, Industry, Life, Science, and Agriculture at UW-Platteville for a short time. Then he leaves us for the technical college system. He described what is being done there to make the four-way pathway clearer to students, primarily by making more extensive web materials to students as they explore and choose majors. He also shared with the committee 4-year and 6-year graduation rates for Platteville, which underscore the need to help students complete their undergraduate degrees more expeditiously. We had quite a good discussion about this and the need for this across campuses. The Senior Vice President also then alerted us, as she usually does, to the work that's coming up for us in the next months, and we always are geared up then once again. So the consent agenda, I offer Resolution 11A2 approving the Master of Fine Arts in Design at UW Stout. Resolution 11B1 approving the extension of the charter school contract with Seeds of Health Incorporated to maintain the charter school known as Seeds of Health Elementary School. Resolution 11B2 approving the extension of the charter school contract with MC Preparatory School Incorporated to maintain the charter school known as Milwaukee College Preparatory School, Metcalf Park. Resolution 11B3 approving the charter school contract with the MC Preparatory School Incorporated to establish the charter school known as the Milwaukee College Preparatory School, Lindsay Heights. And Resolution 11B5 approving the extension of the charter school contract with Racine Charter 1 Incorporated to maintain the charter school known as the 21st Century Preparatory School.
Is there a second? Second. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda, Regent Spector?
11B1.
11B1 is removed from the consent agenda. Any others to remove from the consent agenda? If not, all those in favor of the remaining items, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is agreed to. We'll now consider 11B1. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? That is agreed to with Regent Spector abstaining. Regent Crane, that completes your report.
That's it.
Thank you. We're almost done here. As I mentioned earlier, Jess Lathrop in the Board of Regents office will be working on the Regent policy review as well as other research projects. Since her official title is Assistant Secretary of the Board, may I have a nomination of Jessica Lathrop as Assistant Secretary? So moved. Second? Is there a second? Are there any other nominations? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is agreed to. Are there any communications, petitions, or memorials? Is there any unfinished or additional business that could come before the board? If not, we will take a 10-minute recess, and the board will reconvene in open session to consider a resolution to recess into closed session. Thank you.